Here we are.
There we are. There.
Dude.
Oh, there you are. Do I know you? No, but that's who you are. You're there.
Yes. Hi. Hello. Say hi to Phil.
Hi.
Guten Abend, meine Schatzi.
It is episode 64 of Snakes and Stogies.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good night. Dirty little feet out of socks on my face.
Good night, Allie.
Growth. Oh my God. Close the door.
You're letting all the turkeys kiss out.
How's everybody doing?
I was actually sitting back watching the live feed comments, and they're enjoying it. They're getting rowdy. I like it.
Yeah, dude. Everything here. So I know it's cold everywhere else. It's like low to mid 50s here, and it's raining like it's been doing for 3 weeks. And I just opened the garage, and instantly, like all the glass and stuff started like condensating and stuff on everything. So
condensing.
Yeah, that's why you see this little like shadowy stuff on the side of my camera. There's like condensation on the inside of the lens.
Or as us Southerners like to call it, the beer can effect.
Yeah, that's pretty much what's happening, man. I mean, even this plastic bag with these cigars in it, with this month's Snakes and Stogies sampler, courtesy of Beaufort Tobacco. I'm actually, at the behest of Bob Rock, I'm going to smoke one of these each week, the sampler for that month, and tell everybody sort of my experiences with it, depending on if Phil has one, he can too. But I think I will start off with. I really want that Oliva V, but I know if I smoke something else like that's lighter, I'm not even going to taste it. So I'm going to roll with that Perdomo 20th 6548. It's basically like a Corona. So
nice.
Little bigger.
But I actually pulled one from the last month's sampler because I haven't got this month's. But I was saving it because I love them so damn much. But the VSG.
How did I know?
I know. And I have that other pack that I got to give back to you. And I was so tempted. I was like, should I just buy this one too? There's another VSG in there.
See, the way I look at some of those samplers, because every now and then you'll see one with, 10 cigars or whatever, and there'll be one really good one. And I tell myself, is that one really good cigar worth the $80 or whatever it is for that sampler? Like, right. Is that an $80 cigar? And of course, the answer 9.99 times out of 10 is no. So
yeah.
If you're getting a sampler and you see just one cigar that you really like if you want to buy it, sure, but keep in mind, you can also buy 5 of them for the same price as that sampler. So
what I love about the Snakes and Stogies sampler is that Beaufort Tobacco has such an eclectic collection to offer the people that every time I've gotten a pack, there's been at least one, sometimes 2 sticks that I've never had because they just don't have them where I'm at, So that's the beauty of it.
We like to get people hooked on stuff they can't get.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
So and my lighter is of course running out of fluid. So
my lighter is on its last leg, and now it won't even look. I feel like a welder. I have to use the Bic first, and then it goes.
You probably have it turned up too high.
No,
or you have it turned up too low.
I use Croyle to clean the heads, and the flint got wet. So then Croyle is a penetrating lubricant, so it's shot. I gotta buy a new one, but they were like $8, whatever.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say real quick. I know everyone's dealing with snow, and I hope that everyone in the country who is partaking in our beautiful show, I wish them all the best with their snow endeavors, and I hope that all their reptiles are happy and warm. It's crazy because, I live on tennis courts, and I hear cars drive by, and I hear sirens, and I hear kids screaming because they don't want to go to bed. But tonight was the first night of the year that I heard the chorus of Cuban tree frogs, to the point where I almost was wondering if you could hear them too, and that they just stopped. But it's so loud. It's quite impressive. But then again, you also think, well, no, because they're invasive and it's horrible. But yes, so.
It's not their fault they're there.
It's not their fault that they're there.
I mean, we have like a pretty jam-packed show tonight. Like, I'm actually pretty excited about it. So me and Phil have realized that with the last probably month's worth of episodes of Snakes and Stogies, that hasn't really had a whole lot of direction. Like, I feel like we just kind of rambled and jumped from thing to thing, and usually we'd like circle and do loop-de-loops back to these things, and we get tangents and stuff like that. And so we're making an effort to really make it more cohesive.
Yeah.
Have a better plan for like an outline and things we want to talk about, and make sure that we have something to loosely, like what I do with THP and Snakes and Stogies, a little insider information is like, if you've ever been on the show, you know that I send you an outline that's maybe 10 questions. And so I have that so that there's enough wiggle room for us to where if we go on tangents, we're not eating up all our time, but there's enough of an outline to keep things on track.
Yeah.
So I try to do that with this too.
But let's also say too is that this show is honestly meant to be more of a hangout,
Yes.
And we love the live comments, we love chatting with everybody, and we love the Facebook feedback and the YouTube feedback after the fact. Like, that's awesome. And I get so many people that message me about the stuff we talk about because they can't get on the live chat because they're at work and they listen to it later or whatever. But we are still going to keep it a very much chill hangout thing. But we also realize that we can derail quite easily.
Yes.
So we want to keep it at least on the train tracks. So
I would say this is more casual than THP. Not that THP is anything super.
Sure.
Billy Chicken said we officially have magnetic train tracks. I like that. You can still take it off. It just requires a little force. Like THP has always been, well, I guess depending on what sort of era of THP we're talking about. If we're talking early THP, some of it was a little rough, but I don't know. That's been a little more straight-laced, a little more straightforward. Like Snakes and Stogies, it is a little more casual, like more opinions, less information, I guess.
Sure.
Compared to THP. Like, this is more of like a philosophy thing, like what we think and how we do things. And then THP is much more about like the person we have on and picking their brain and answering the questions that we have for them. So I am very excited about the things that I wanted to talk about.
So am I. I actually, I pulled up old pictures. Hold on. Can you guys hear the frogs? Listen.
I don't hear anything. Your mic really isn't that sensitive. Like,
damn,
it's perfect. Like, it picks you up and like none of the background stuff.
Because it's literally going, brrr, but like hundreds of frogs. It's amazing. Hey, what's up, Mr. Smith?
My daddy says hi.
Daddy says what's up. Love it.
So I'll talk about this real quick, since that's people want to know about these samplers and stuff.
Inquiring minds want to know.
If you're in the Snakes and Stogies group, every time I do one of these samplers, I put I post an announcement post that basically outlines the filler, wrapper, and binder of these and sort of my notes. So this is a Perdomo 20th anniversary Connecticut. They have in this line, they have a Connecticut, a Sungrown, and a Maduro. In my opinion, the Connecticut is the better of the three. And I like this size in particular because I like thinner gauge cigars. I like Coronas. I like lighters that work, which apparently for Phil is a very hard thing to find. So this one is a lighter. It is a lighter smoke, but it will, because it is that thinner gauge and it is a little more concentration of the flavor. We've talked about filler wrapper ratio before. This does have a little bit more. What's the word for it? It's got a little bit more going on than some of the other Connecticut's in this line and other Connecticut's in general, just because it's a thinner smoke. So you're going to get a little more flavor. It's going to be a little pepperier. I'm kind of going through it, so I'll do updates as we go through. But right now I'm just tasting some pepperiness to it, and I'm sure it'll get better. But yeah, my dad is a hardcore Lot 23 guy from Perdomo. Which, it's kind of odd with Perdomo stuff. I find that like the Lot 23s, I love the Maduro more than the Connecticut. But then with everything else that Perdomo does, I prefer the Connecticut over the Maduros. So I really hope I don't lose power because it's thundering. So that would suck. But I guess we could talk about lighters real quick since we were talking about that. You have a single flame?
No, this is a I want to say Vertigo. It's one of the.
But how many burners does it have on it?
Oh no, I'm sorry. This particular one's 3.
Oh, okay. So you'll notice you go to a shop and you'll have single torches, double torches, triples, and quads. So what me and Phil have are 3s. I prefer a 3. A quad is okay too. I think it's kind of a little overkill. Dude, everything's covered in water because of the condensation. So like this tabletop lighter, this is also a 3 burner. I prefer 3s just because it's easier to light. Single torches, which just have a single burner on them, in my opinion, like they're fine, but I feel like you burn through a lot more gas and you have to refill it more often because you're taking longer to get it lit. With something like this, it's just kind of ready to go. You don't have to worry about it.
I like the 3 because you can feather the flame more than you can with a traditional just soft torch or soft like a Bic lighter. Like for example, I mean, you shouldn't really use Bic lighters per se because you're going to taste that lighter fluid. It's gross. Right. But if you notice, if I light my cigarette lighter like this, see how it moves so much on a torch? Justin, hit your torch real quick just so people can see. It's steady and it's not
consistent.
Moving.
Yeah.
Consistent. It's exactly the same. And mine's all messed up, so it wouldn't look good. That's why I had Justin use his. But I can turn my hand and I can rotate that flame and get as far or as deep away into it as I want and not necessarily have to continually roll the cigar, and I can get a consistent, even burn. And like even on this one, you can see let me get the camera right. I mean, I pulled pretty hard on that first couple draws, but that's like almost perfect.
Yeah.
So
there's soft flames, which is what a Bic is, or lighting with cedar. And then there's torches, which is what you see, like what we always light with. The difference is, and there is a difference, if you light with a soft flame like a Bic, or ideally you'd take like a piece of cedar. I don't have any cedar strips right now, but you take a torch and you light a cedar strip and then you light your cigar. If you're using matches, it's also a little easier because you have more time before the flame gets to your fingers to get it lit. But it burns way cooler than torch does. So you're not really quote unquote burning the tobacco in a sense. You're getting a little more flavor out of cigars that way. Burnt cedar actually smells really good too. So there is a place for both. Torches are just easier.
I also says I enjoy a match very much so, but because I'm outside and there is a little bit of a cross breeze, match can be a pain in the ass. One thing that I notice a lot of people do is, especially if they have a short match, like a little wooden stick ones, they'll crack it quick and they'll hold it in the crook of their hand, which is fine, but they'll do that right in front of the end of the cigar. And that sulfur that burns off initially from the magnesium that's in there, that sulfur that burns off real quick, you'll pull that in and that'll taste really funky. So I always tell people, if you're going to use a match, light it, give it a second to kind of do its sparking thing. And then once you see the actual flame, then go for it. My personal opinion.
Yeah. And that's what it basically boils down to, some people just want to get it lit. Some people want to there's like the ritual aspect of it, and people want to make it, a thing and an experience, and that's fine too, whatever. But I need your opinion on something.
What do you got?
So our buddy Ryan Reed came by the house today.
Yes, sir.
Got all the Dart Frog tanks, so I'm officially out of Dart Frogs.
You're amphibianless?
I am amphibianless.
Oh, Smitty.
I've mentioned it before. They were taking up space that I really needed to focus on the Bairds and the other stuff. But he offered me a pair of Rio Fuerte beaded lizards.
Wow. Now we're talking.
Because, he got all the frogs, all the tanks, all the lights, like the stands that some of those tanks were on. Like, it was a lot of stuff. So, it's not like it was like I gave him $40 of frogs and he's like, hey, here, here's a, whatever, they're going $1,000 in lizards or whatever.
Yeah.
So I was talking to him because I was like, space wise, like those are not small lizards. They're not massive, but they're not tiny either. We're not talking about like blue tongue skinks here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he said I should totally get something, either build something or get something that I can use as the background to where there's more height rather than depth, because they're climbers. They're more. I won't say arboreal. They're bigger climbers than Gilas are.
Right.
And have that as like the background where you see like a pair of just big beateds just hanging out, which actually sounded pretty cool. So
what's your question then? Because I have a couple things.
Should I do it? Henry says take them.
The fact that you're even asking me if you should acquire them, I think is foolish. You should absolutely acquire them. Don't ask me, just do it. Now, the real question is though, how much room did you free up in the snake room? And do you want to allocate that empty space to more snakes, or do you want to make it the beaded enclosures?
No, if I was going to do beadeds, they would be in here.
Yeah, 100% take them. I agree with that.
That's what, talking to Reed, he keeps his in his garage. He said, in the winter it works out because it doesn't really get super cold here, so it naturally kind of cools them off.
Oh, yeah.
And then he said in the summer it stays warm and humid enough that they'll be fine too.
Yeah, 100% do it.
Now it's just a matter of what is your opinion on what size cage I should get. I was thinking like the minimum of 6x2x2.
So, in my personal opinion, are you going to keep them together? I'm also thinking
I'll probably keep them together, yeah.
Okay.
I'm thinking ideally a 6x4x2.
6 feet tall by 4 feet wide?
6 feet wide and 4 feet tall.
Okay. So here's my thing. I am all for beadeds having the height to climb.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually seen it where guys put bird nests and like let them raid the nests and like had foliage, creeping vines and stuff, and it was awesome. And I've seen copious amounts of pictures of them actually in trees.
Yeah.
So I'm all for it. However, I know a lot of guys that they just don't do it because they've given them the option and they didn't climb. So it was almost like a waste. I don't like keeping stuff together. So if you were keeping them separately, I would say let's do 6 by 3 by 2 or 3, right? And then stack them on top of each other. But if you're going to do one big wall unit, then rock and roll, man. Do it. My only concern is if you're going to do it as a backdrop, you have to figure out how you're going to have the lighting so that it doesn't blow out your camera and so that it doesn't have bad glare and you can actually see the enclosure.
That's actually, so I'm also looking at changing up my table because I have this round table. You saw it when I was here. I'm really tired of this round table. I'm going to look into like a legitimate like 60 long or 60 wide like desk. And then I'm going to have, so I have these boom arms. I found a little mount that instead of it being a mic clip, it's a like a tripod thread. So I can mount my camera to this. And I have more of these. And so my plan was if I have a straight table instead of this round thing, I can have both the camera and the mic facing me and they'll be adjustable so I can angle it however I need to. So I was figuring either behind me or right here to the side of me along the wall.
I mean, I would do it behind you because if it works out as a great backdrop,
it would be cool. Yeah.
If it doesn't work out, you just put the background you have now,
Mm-hmm.
But regardless, you need to get them. They're going to be extremely rewarding. And the best part is Reed did all the real work for you. You know what I mean? In terms of getting them established and taming them down and all that jazz. So you really don't have to.
He actually said,
train them.
They all were produced by his original pair. And that original pair, he said they originally came from Frank Menser.
You're kidding.
Your buddy.
My late mentor.
Your late mentor.
Wow, that's fantastic.
I thought that was pretty cool.
That means that I have to get babies from you.
I mean, I'm not jumping that gun too quick, but
when the time comes, I'm your first customer.
They are very pretty. I mean, they're out of all the heliderms, minus Gilas, like outside of Gilas, I think the exasperatum are the prettiest.
Yeah, I don't. Of the beateds, they're the prettiest because I'm a Gila guy through and through. But of the beateds, I think they're the prettiest.
Yeah. So I don't know.
You need to do it. And you were saying, I think I caught earlier in the group chat that Reed even convinced Katie.
Yeah, kind of. I was like, dude, sell them.
Sell them.
Really, really sell them.
Sell them.
Because of course, them being venomous and stuff, that made her a little apprehensive. But once, Reed was also like, these guys, they're his animals, so he knows what the quirks kind of the individuals and stuff. And he says, these guys, they'll headbutt you, they'll kind of hiss, they'll make a show. He's like, but once they're out, they're, they don't care. So
yeah.
Obviously, it's not something I'm just going to be. It's not a bearded dragon, and it's not something I'm just going to go in there and grab.
Right.
But he says, if you do have to move them and stuff like that, he said they're not difficult. So
no, and you do have the peace of mind knowing that no one on record has ever died from an envenomation, which is good. You just wish you were dead.
Yay!
I say you do it, man. It's going to be awesome. I think you're going to have a lot of fun with it, especially since, even though they are carnivorous, there is a lot of variability in the diet, and I think you're going to enjoy that, especially with eggs and the mice that you're raising.
Well, I was surprised because he's also feeding them a lot less than I thought they needed to be fed.
They're not going anywhere. They're just chilling in captivity. So, yeah.
But he said even some Gilas only eat like once a year.
You're kidding? In the wild or in captivity?
In the wild.
Oh, okay.
But
yeah, I mean, I go good stretches on my lizards, on the Gilas, and I do small meals often for a good amount of time, and then I take like a month off, and then I'll do start back up again, And by small meals, I do mean small meals. So like if I have an adult female, I'll give her like 2 rat pinks on a Monday, and then maybe like Wednesday or Thursday, maybe give her another rat pink. And then maybe Saturday do like cracked egg, just whipped up raw in a cup, and she'll drink it like a milkshake, things like that. So,
yeah, and I mean that makes it even easier because, as we all know, I breed my own mice, so that's not an issue. Eggs, those are a dime a dozen. My aunt and uncle have chickens; they have a whole like chicken compound, so they have more eggs than they could ever deal with. So, I don't even have to technically pay for eggs if I didn't want to,
Yeah,
it's in a good spot. It's just figuring out the caging thing, which
I'm sure you'll be fine.
I'm gonna hit up Sean and see what he can do. But I would rather have something slightly taller than deeper. Because like we've talked about before is like that using that space efficiently. Like it's okay to do stuff like that where it's not as deep, but it is taller as long as you're using. Like maximizing all the space between those 4 walls.
Yeah. What you need to do is have the enclosure set up and then have
6 walls.
Have ramps that go up to like a plateau or a landing, and then have another ramp that kind of goes along parallel. That way, if they fall, it's not like a big fall. But what I've always wanted to do, and I never had the gumption to do it because I really didn't have a lizard that was needed it, but take grout. Like normal grout that you would normally use for like tile floor, and paint grout all over the ramp and the landing.
Give it some texture.
And throw on your eco mix or your eco earth or your jungle mix or whatever, or just peat or whatever. And then as they're climbing, it's going to wear down them claws too.
Yeah, I was going to ask you and read about that. Is you ever trim yours down or anything like that? Because I've seen pictures of them and they're crazy long sometimes.
Yeah, people let them go. There's been bouts where my girl had some gnarly nails, and I kind of just left them because she's gonna walk on hard. I have hard surfaces in there. I have excavator clay and rocks and stone, and I've seen it where she broke a tip off, and they just grind it down on their own. The ones that you see that look like the guy from the Guinness Book of World Records, those are usually people that don't have a substrate. They're on paper.
Yeah.
Just on,
like a cat. There's nothing for them to scratch on, so they're naturally going to get a little gnarly.
Yeah. I would never cut, in my opinion. I would never use like a cat toenail clipper. I would do like a Dremel if you could, or even just like an emery board.
A petty paws.
Yeah, sure. But like even if you just got an emery board and just hit it with an emery board, and again, never do this by yourself. Always do it with someone helping because it is a venomous animal. I'll preface that.
Are they big diggers?
Yes and no. Gila's way more than beateds, but you got to remember too is a lot of the time they're stealing burrows or borrowing burrows.
Yeah,
you'll see a tortoise
squatting.
Burrow. Yeah, they're squatting. A tortoise burrow will have a tortoise and a western diamondback and a Gila all chilling together. So,
oh well, I'm gonna have to figure out how to make it happen.
I think you're gonna have a lot of fun with it, man. I'm glad this is panning
Well,
out.
and that's kind of like, how I've said I've sworn off things with legs.
Yeah, but
this is a little different because we're not talking about like bugs and vegetables and fruits and all that, every other day. They're almost more snake-like than anything else. So,
well, I consider them snakes. Like when people ask me, like, "Oh, what's your head count on snakes?" or "How many snakes you have?" I count them because they basically are.
Brad says he uses floor tile upside down, which makes sense because it has like a texturiness to it. So,
yeah, that's brilliant. Good stuff, man. In the Heliderm game. Did I tell you about the book in Daytona from my mentor?
Yeah, I think so.
Should I tell that story? Is that a bad story?
No, I don't. I remember bits and pieces of it. But.
Okay, so the guy, for those of you listening, my late mentor, Franz Menser, or Frank as we used to call him, he's the guy that got me hooked on taxonomy. He's the guy that got me hooked on, unique and seldomly seen species. And he's really the guy that burned scientific nomenclature into my mind and made me crave it, because the guy was literally a walking textbook. He knew three things. He knew how to be a bodybuilder. He knew fossils and reptiles. That's all the guy did. And I know a lot of fish too, but I think the fish was to equal everything out. But he had given me a couple snakes for gifts over the years, and then things pass away, time goes on, and then Frank wound up passing away. And I didn't know until I was going. Every year I go up to Philadelphia for a week to like visit family and chill out for like a week. And I usually on my way back, I'll stay at his house with his wife, Marianne, excuse me. And I'll stay for a day, maybe 2 days, and then finish the drive back to South Florida. They were in the Carolinas. And I couldn't get a hold of Marianne. I couldn't get a hold of Frank. And I found out that he passed away. And, like, not to sound morbid, but like, it's nice to have like mementos or pictures or whatever of someone that was a significant part of your life. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. And I really didn't have that. I had some Facebook photos that he had sent me over the years of like him in like the 80s catching, aberrant scarlet king snakes in what would be my parents' yard before it was developed, and things like that. But anyway, he had a massive book collection, makes probably 2 to 3 times the size of Scott Eipers. And the guy had been collecting, it was all fossils and snakes and lizards and fish. He had been collecting books since the 50s. And I always wanted to know what happened to those books. And I was at a Daytona a few years back. And my first thing I always do is I go to the book guy. Because I figure if there's a good book there, it's going to get snatched up in the first hour of the show. Because there's other people that think like me. So I always walk past everybody, go right to the book guy. Well, there was this one book, it was actually by Johan from the African Snakebite Institute, and it's Snakes of Southern Africa. And it's a book that I've always wanted. And I could buy it on Amazon, but like part of the fun is the hunt of it,
Yeah.
So I see this book and I'm like, oh, that's Johan's book. I've always wanted it. I'm going to buy it. I don't even look at the price. And I take it, and the guy opens it up to see the pencil marking of, $49.95 or whatever the hell it was. And he opens it, and I see a stamp that says Franz Menser, Plantation, Florida. And I was like, whoa, no way. And I said, where did you get this book? Did you get it from a short little woman with dark black hair named Marianne? And he goes, yeah, her husband passed away, and I bought her whole collection. I said, really? I said, did you have any more of his books? He goes, no, man. That guy had the best book collection in the world. All his stuff sold in a New York minute. He says, except for this one. I said, well, I'll take it. And I have that book now. And I called Marianne because we still talk on Facebook from time to time. Mm-hmm. And then it wasn't until Southeast Carpet Fest when I was with you and Ryan Reed. Yeah. And both Reed and I were like, man, we know each other from somewhere. Come to find out that I would go over Frank's house 2 or 3 times a week. He would go over Frank's house 2 or 3 times a week. And on multiple occasions, he would be leaving the place while I was just getting there. And I'd be like, hey, man, like we never like formally
that
really.
Wild. I remember that whole thing. Yeah, man, it's a small world. It's wild.
It's great. And now you have the offspring of Frank's lizards. So it's awesome. It's awesome that we can all be connected,
Small world.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So
let's get to the agenda.
I wanted to talk about the most challenging species we've kept, but I feel like that ties more into the pros and cons of a diverse collection afterward.
Okay. However you want to quarterback this.
So, pros and cons of a diverse collection, because there are many.
There are many. Many pros, many cons. I would say almost equal.
Pros, yeah. Pros for me is if you're in the hobby long term, you keep a diversity of things. You have a better sort of like with age in general. You have a better perspective and you have a better scope of experiences. So obviously, if you're just keeping ball pythons, 10 years you'll know those things inside and out. But then you get something like Gonyosoma or Chondros, and it's like, sometimes it can throw people off.
Yeah.
So I think having, and maybe that's I guess part of the problem too, is when you have a scope like that and you have these different things. It makes keeping your focus difficult sometimes when you have interest in so many things and your room is only so big. But I think the most important positive aspect of it is just being able, having at least an idea. If someone has a question about a certain species and it's like, I haven't kept Texas rats, I've kept bears, so I kind of understand the similar habitats and things like that. I'm horrible at explaining it. I've been thinking about it all day, but I'm sure you can put it more succinctly than I have, because you also have kept a little bit of everything.
Very diverse. So I like to have a diverse collection. I've always had a diverse collection. It's always been what I wanted. It's always been what I liked. And I think that like you said about maturity and age and experience, they all go hand in hand. When you're young, you have delusions of grandeur, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to keep every species of, Australian python, or I'm going to keep every species of cobra. And you realize that it is attainable if that's what you really want to do. But is that really what you want to do, or do you just want to work with as many species as you can, or photograph them, or just read about them, or whatever it is? So we think about, do I really want to keep the diversity, or do I just enjoy the hunt of it? Do I enjoy the challenge of a particular group of animals? And it wasn't until recently that Hen Dog actually, told me, he's like, listen, man, you're stagnant with the animals that you got. You love them, they're your babies, but you're looking for the next thing and you don't know what it is. And he says, you got to find a species, you got to focus on it. And it doesn't mean you have to get 30 of them. You get 1 or 2 or 5, whatever. You want to have a small group of them. That's great. And you focus on that species so that it rekindles the feelings that you maybe have had in the past that have maybe fizzled out or lingered or whatever. Mm-hmm. But then you go, you go all the way back to in the beginning when you were younger. And again, piss and vinegar, and you maybe get some stuff that you thought you liked and you didn't. And you learned that you didn't. And it's not that you don't like that animal. That animal wasn't for you. That's part of
everyone changes too, just like cigars. Everyone's taste over time will change. You may come into cigars loving the strong, heavy stuff, and then as you get older, you come to find you like Connecticut's more than anything else, and vice versa. And I think it's whether that's a subconscious thing or just something that just happens to be, the direction that you head through, past experiences or whatever. I don't know, like Amazon tree boas for me are a good example, or Antaresia. I've had a good bit of both in the past, and I'm kind of at a point now where it's like, yeah, Amazons are cool, but I really don't have any desire to keep them again. Same with children's pythons and spotteds. It's just, they're cool and all, but I've just decided that they're not for me. They're not my thing. They're cool. I like them. I definitely have a good appreciation for a really good looking children's, and granite spotteds are awesome, but I don't feel like dealing with them. I don't feel like, I don't want to deal with babies. You got to kind of pick and choose your battles, I guess, when it comes to that. But it's one of those things where if I had only had, maybe one of those things in previous years, like rainbow boas, I've had one rainbow boa in my life, and it was cool. It wasn't anything that made me want to say, I got to get more of these. And so I think it's just, like I said, it's the direction of where your past experiences sort of, it's like rear wheel drive in a sense. Like that's bumps in the road and things are what determine sort of where you head.
In your younger years, the diversity allows you to test the water and see what you like and what you don't like. And then in your older years, you know what you like and what you don't like. Or maybe you want to revisit something from the past and say,
I think, when you do it early like that, you find something that you get cemented in, like Morelia for me.
Right.
I got into carpets way earlier, and I got those before I got ball pythons. And I think that has a very heavy hand in why I prefer Morelia over anything else. I mean, I've had some ball pythons on and off over the years too. And that's another thing where it's like, they're cool. They're nice to have around, I guess. But when it comes to like what I really want to walk into my room and see and really want to reproduce, it's carpets.
Yeah. Dude, Diamond Jungle F1 Hybrid was my first ever python, flat out. I only kept colubrids before that. And it's funny because I got it. It's funny that today's the day after Valentine's Day. I got that snake. Some people know the story, some people don't. I got that snake on Valentine's Day when I was 18. And my girlfriend and I at the time, who were actually friends, we still talk. It was my first like real girlfriend. And her and I got in a big fight on Valentine's Day. Just something happened. I don't even remember what we were fighting about. It was dumb young kid
crap. The Sadie Hawkins dance.
Yeah, and I had the day off from work, and I mapped out what I was going to do, and I don't know if our plans got canceled. I don't know. Anyway, I got pissed. And what's Josh saying? Or Joseph?
So diversity has been fun this time around, but I forget I have frogs until they croak on otherwise silent nights. He said, I have a Pac-Man that straight up owes me a new pair of pants.
That's awesome. So it's Valentine's Day, and I got in a fight with my girlfriend, and I go to Underground, and I wanted a new snake. I was like, I'm going to buy a new snake. And I see this Diamond Jungle F1 Hybrid, and I really didn't know anything about carpets or diamonds.
Emotional spender.
And I was like, that thing's adorable. I'm taking that home. And I named him Valentino. And he was born in 2004, and he still lives at my friend Chris's house. He's 7 foot.
You know what's hilarious? In a parallel to that story, there was a girl I dated at 1.2, and I got her a ball python from PetSmart on Valentine's Day. And guess what I named it?
Valentino?
Yep. And then the day that I ended up leaving, she was at work. I borrowed my dad's truck. I packed up all my shit and moved back in with my parents, which is like not even 10 minutes up the road from where she lived. And then she came home, and I contemplated taking that snake with me. I was like, I really don't think she's going to take care of it. But it was also like that ball python was kind of a dick. So I was like, no, she can deal with it. So I left him there. And he was named Valentino, and I hated that thing.
Well, my Valentino turned out to be a raging asshole. And my friend Chris now has to treat it like it's venomous because you can't tell the animal. You can't remove with your hands. He will literally just go right for your face. And it's just that, the black mouth coming at you. And he likes it because he's a former venomous guy. And it's good. But yeah, it's going back to the diversities. I only had colubrids up until that point, and that right there spawned a Morelia addiction,
And that's another pro is like by deciding that you want to diversify and try new things, you find out, you may find something that you really enjoy, like the Heloderma. I've never kept Heloderms.
Yeah.
So these would be my first ones. Could it spark something that makes me want to pursue them a little more? Who knows? I'm not going to say it will or it won't. I could get them and turn out that, hey, they're not my thing.
Yeah.
But you don't know until you try, which is kind of a good and a bad thing. Something that we see a lot on social media is people with the impulse buys. They go to a show, they see a Biak green tree or something, they buy it, and they're super jazzed to put it in a, natural setup or something, and then just come to find out that it just doesn't do well. And some people may decide to take that on as a challenge to do better, and that may end up sparking something as a love for that group of snakes. Or it could be like my first Biak that I kept horribly, and I killed it in I think less than 3 months. And at that point I was out a good bit of money, and I was really annoyed, and I said, I'm never going to keep these things again.
Yeah.
Fast forward 12 years. It was like 2007, I think. Here I am.
Yeah.
With all of them.
What's funny is you got to talk about like disposable pets and like those bunny rabbits at Easter and stuff like that. Nice, Brad. People talk about disposable pets, and that's horrible. People adopt these animals or they buy these animals and then they just pawn them off because it wasn't what they thought they wanted. And when I was a young kid, somebody told me, it was like, oh, you want to get a tattoo because you just want to get a tattoo? Then go for it, get a tattoo. But if you really want like a work of art on your body, they said, draw out a picture or print out a picture and tape it on the mirror in your bathroom. So that way, every single time you use that sink 3, 4, 10 times a day, you have to look at that picture. And if you still love that picture after like a year, then go ahead and get a tattoo. And obviously no one does that. We get tattoos because we feel like it. But I almost feel the same way with a lot of species, is that I've done my homework, I researched it, and maybe I waited till the next season or I waited until I had the money. But that time of evaluating it also was part of having a diverse collection, because it was like, do I really want to add that type of animal? Do I really want to add that habitat too? Because we haven't even touched base on that, is that you and I, our collections, although very eclectic, they're pretty much all around the same.
They all fall around that same parameters as far as care. There's not a whole lot of, there's nothing that really needs extra special. Not like diamond pythons that need a separate space with colder temperatures. Like everything's fairly within a set range.
Yeah, don't go buy a baby diamond python and expect to keep it in the same room that you keep, 10 enclosures with Euromastics. Like that's just not going to happen. You're going to have major problems. Yeah, we call that enough. Call it the surface of the sun. So think about how you want to have your diverse collection, and that'll give you a better idea of do you really want that animal, or is it just something that you're like enamored with at the time? My roommate's a great example, because my roommate, he really, really wanted to do axolotls, and he went full gusto axolotls with chillers for the tanks, and he had prize adults that he spent tons of money on, and honestly, the chiller system that he had was all like saltwater fish tank based and getting the pH levels right. And he realized that as much as he loves them, he didn't have the time to really do it correctly. So then after about 6 months of it, he realized that this is more than he is willing to do. And therefore he gave them to friends and, sold the chiller stuff to some fish tank people, and, he got out of it. But he took the time to think about how he wanted to do it, and then realized, nah, I'm a Python guy. I got to get out of this. What was I thinking, So we've all been there. We've all done it to some degree or not.
Oh, yeah. And I think, maybe I see it in chondros in particular. You have some people that get their first chondro, and within no time, they're up to like 6 of them.
Yeah.
And I don't agree with it. That's not how I would do it.
Right.
Because I do think there is such a thing as moving too fast.
Yeah.
Because, people, especially now, everyone, it's very, very much in fashion to want to breed everything.
Yep.
I'm guilty of it. I'm not saying that I'm above it or anything like that. I'm the same way. But I do think you're kind of selling yourself a little short. You're making things a little harder on yourself, because the first time that one of those animals has issues and ends up being something viral like Nido, now you have all these animals you just dropped a ton of money on, and now you have the giant outbreak of sorts. And since you haven't had a whole lot of experience with things prior, you may not know how to handle it, and it just becomes one of those things where it just becomes too much. And
yeah. Well, there's also just going back to venomous, because it's what I do, man. I've seen so many new venomous keepers, whether they have a mentor or not. And honestly, it's better when they have a mentor. Let me formulate my thoughts. Excuse me. So you'll see individuals that I start mentoring in the beginning when they're first starting out. They're like, oh man, one day I want to have a Gaboon Viper. And then they say, oh man, one day I want this, one day I want that. But I still want that Gaboon Viper. My first one's going to be a Gaboon Viper. After I put 3 years with you, Phil, I'll be ready. I'm just going to go for the gusto and get a Gaboon Viper. And then after 3 years or 2.5 years or however long it takes them, they go, man, what was I thinking? when they've had the Gaboon Viper for, they've been using mine, so to speak, and they're like, man, why did I ever want that thing? Like, and it could be anything. It doesn't have to be Gaboon Viper. It could be anything. It could be, Baird's rats. It could be yellow rats. It could be Bowen's pythons. But that does happen. And then what also happens is people that are extremely excited about the venomous, and they go, oh man, I'm finally going to get my license. I'm finally going to get my license. And they bite off more than they can chew. And they put in a deposit on this snake, and they put a deposit on that snake, and they buy this snake, and they buy that snake, and now they have their license. And before they realize it, what they should have is maybe 1 or 2 animals, or maybe 3 or 4 animals.
Mm-hmm.
And in the first 6 months, they have 30, and they go, "Wow,
yeah,
what did I do?"
It's kind of like you wake up at one point, and you're like, "Where? How did?"
Yeah,
I've done it. I'm firmly convinced that we all every 4 years go through a cycle where we do like a spring cleaning, especially people that have a little bit of everything, like Phil and I. It's one of those things where every 4 years we kind of stop and we walk in a room and we're like, how did I end up with those and that and this?
Oh,
you end up selling off those things that you're like, I don't know why I have this. It was, be it an impulse buy, be it something that you were interested in briefly.
And
it's funny. Everyone seems to agree with that. That, like I said, it's like once every 3 to 5 years, you kind of wake up and you're like, I really don't like dart frogs. I got my first dart frogs 3 years ago,
and
I just got to a point where I was like, I need that space, and I don't feel like dealing with fruit flies anymore. Not that they're hard to do or anything like that, but when your cultures keep crashing, it's kind of a pain in the ass.
I've also had it where people, and I don't really have it right now, but in the past, I've had people that were, hey man, will you hold on to this for me? And I say, sure, no problem. They're moving, or, they're having a baby and they want to, get the baby established first. They don't want to deal with their animal. And all of a sudden, I've been guilty of it too. My good friend, Zach, I gave him, I don't even remember. I gave him like 2 or 3 snakes. I was like, yo, I'm moving. Can you hang on to these for me? And at the time, we were doing venomous classes at his home. So twice a week I was there taking care of him. So it wasn't really a burden for him, but they were still
them off.
Right. But they were still there. And then eventually other people did that, and they did pawn them off on him, and people did that to me, and they pawned it off on me. And it's like, oh, I'll get it. And, my friend Chris, who has my Diamond Jungle hybrid, I had a friend who was like, hey man, will you take this pair of Southern Pacific rattlesnakes for me, or Northern Pacific rattlesnakes, or Oregonus? And, I was like, no, I don't got room, but Chris has room. Can I give him to Chris? They're like, yeah, give him to Chris. It was a year before that guy picked up his animals. And it's like, you got to be mindful of that. But at the same time, just because you got stuck with those animals doesn't mean you have to keep them per se. If you fall in love with them, you fall in love with them. But if you want to get rid of them, get rid of them.
Right.
They were dumped on your doorstep, so to speak. Obviously through legitimate means. Don't just, give them away to anybody,
Yeah. And I mean, the venomous thing, kind of like that diversity, I think does give you a major leg up in having kept and worked with different stuff, because obviously that puts you in a better position to teach somebody else how to deal with it. Someone who's been working with nothing but Trimeresurus, Atheris, and whatever else, them now teaching someone how to work with Mambas, that's kind of apples to oranges,
Absolutely.
So what are the cons? I know we talked about we kind of covered at least 2 of them. The diversity means you have to have certain parameters for how you're keeping different things. Like obviously the way I keep my Boiga is not the same way I keep my Bairds. Obviously the way I keep my Brettles is not the same way I keep my Chondros.
Yeah.
So you do kind of have to be a jack of all trades in a sense.
Sure.
Jack of all trades, master of none, if you look at it that way. But
yeah, I also noticed that your husbandry needs to be more observant, because you may be inadvertently affecting one species or another simply by association. If I've got a stack of visions and I'm not going to put the hot stuff in the bottom because heat rises. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Put the cool stuff in the bottom. So thinking like that and how you're going to arrange it can be troublesome, and you need to be mindful of it. At the same time, you could have an issue where, I hate to say it, but those people like at the Petco type places where they have a ball python and a red tail boa in the same enclosure and they're selling both at the same time, that's not good, because they both come from different parts of the world. They're different animals. And who's to say that what's floating around in the water bowl from the ball python isn't going to affect the red tail? And same thing with your tools and your tongs and all that. So, talk about different, diseases and pathogens, and, you can have a collection that's extremely diverse and inadvertently hurt your other animals per se.
Yeah. It's, Joseph wanted to know, how are the Oregonus in captivity?
They are pains in the ass. They are, they never stop rattling. They never stop rattling, and they basically get very, very defensive. I made the mistake of keeping them together, which was fine when we were trying to breed them, but man, like, one gets fired up and it starts popping shots at the other one, and then the one starts hitting the glass, and it's like it's too much stress, in my opinion. It's not like Westerns where they all gang up on you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Not gang up. You know what I mean? I'm being facetious, but yeah, I would say if you're going to keep them extremely relaxed and limit human exposure as much as you can to keep the stress levels down. And I would say try and keep them separate, simply because they are so on edge.
Well, I did a post in the Snakes and Stogies group asking if people wanted to add any questions to, relating to what we have outlined, and Brendan Meyer, who's a fellow Baird's addict,
Nice.
asked, does diversity automatically equal a more time-consuming collection to feed, clean, and breed and maintain? Where do you find the balance in diversity to be?
It's a pain in the ass. It is.
I think it just depends on how many things do you have that are on opposite ends of the bell curve.
That's true. That is true.
I mean, to me, like, I have record keeping cards, right? I'm horrible about staying up to date on them. But the rate that I feed the corns and the Bairds and the rat snakes is different than the rate I feed the chondros. So sometimes it does get tough where it's like, did I feed that rack last week, the week before?
Yeah.
When was the last time I fed the chondros? So I mean, I make it harder myself by not keeping track of those things. But I mean, that is one thing. Like, it is kind of, I've talked about it before, where I do like having this stuff that is, requires no thought to keep. The Bairds, the corns, the stuff that if anything goes wrong, they're going to be fine, more than likely. But I like to balance that with the stuff that is a little more difficult, a little more sensitive, be it chondros, the Jansseni, the Boigo, which I think the Boiger just as hardy as anything else. So it is kind of a balancing act. But Bill brings up a good point. He said diversity just means consistent work, no days off. Bug and salad eaters eat more often, so they get clean more often. Typically, snakes don't, which is a good point. I mean, we're talking about diversity just in the sense of snakes,
Yeah,
but
that's true.
when you're keeping stuff like the geckos, like when I was breeding crested and stuff, when I was done with cresteds, I was done, man. And it was one of those things where I missed just having to worry about snakes.
Yeah.
It was like, man, like Sundays were my cleaning days with geckos, and we were talking like 6 hours of my day just in cleaning and getting everybody on the same page, with food and water and stuff like that. And after a while, I was like, this is just, I just want to be able to enjoy them. Just worry about feeding once, and it would take me an hour just to clean, just as many snakes as it would with the cresteds. It's just,
right. I find
that dealing in that realm of stuff.
And just to expand on that too, is that you're dealing with however many, you had 100 geckos of all the same type eating the same prey item, eating at the same time, and you could kind of base your schedule around the fact that they were all uniform. I've got different species that need to eat more frequently or less frequently. They're eating different prey items, and I've even go so far as to do different times of the day, because like I've got animals that I'll try and feed them in the morning and it'll just sit there and rot. But if I feed them at 10 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock when I get home from work or whatever, I get a different response because that's their crepuscular cycle or whatever. So that needs to be taken into consideration as well. I don't know if that's a pro or a con because you're experiencing the variety of life. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's a pain in the ass because I got to remember, crap, it's Wednesday. I got to feed those guys because I didn't do it on Sunday when I fed everybody else. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how it was for me with like some of the geckos that would eat bugs and some wouldn't. And so was it like, am I really going to go through and offer the ones that I know eat bugs and the ones that might eat them and then the ones I know don't eat at all? Or am I just going to not offer bugs, And a good majority of them didn't bother with dubia roaches when I had them. And so it was like, why am I bothering with bugs? And even then I only fed bugs when they were small because as soon as they hit like 15 or 20 grams, they started packing on so much weight because I was feeding them bugs that I had to just cut them off. And, getting cresteds or gargs to lose weight is impossible.
Yeah.
Without flat out just starving them for an indefinite period of time, which I don't really agree with that. I don't think that's right. And so I got to the point where I just stopped messing with dubia altogether. But Jeff made a very good point. That's something I've said a lot. Biggest thing is you have to be realistic and know your limits.
Yeah.
So knowing if you know your limits and you're honest with yourself and you know these things about yourself, that is a huge leg up. At the same time, the only way you know your limits is to push those limits to the point where I don't want to deal with 80 crested geckos a week cleaning and feeding.
Yeah. And then you also think about different stages of life too. Is certain animals require more attentiveness when feeding, whether it be small arboreal species, whether it be Amazons or Trimerceros, or even stuff like even highly aquatic species that are fish eaters. We see. We see Doc feeding his Neurodia on tongs, and he clacks the tongs on the thing, and the Neurodia shoots out and grabs the fish. Like, he's obviously worked with those animals to a certain extent where they've been almost trained to do it. But, there will be a day when I intentionally breed Trimerceros, and I'm going to have my hands full with feeding baby arboreal animals, peaky parts and tease feeding and trying to do it at different times of the day and learning their cycle and learning how they do it. And at the same time, still manage the other animals that are in the collection that kind of don't care or already have their schedule. So being realistic with yourself is a really big deal. And and that's a con and a pro in itself, because you can have the diversity and the eclecticness and enjoy this, menagerie at home, as long as you know what you're getting into. And, Dominique pulls up a great question is, how does having a diverse collection change your quarantine procedures? Certain times it's, Jeff's talking about, giving his Candoya guppies. Excuse me, going back to the quarantine stuff, it depends on your ability in your home. Do you have a room that's a quarantine room? Do you have a rack that's a quarantine rack? Do you have a closet that's downstairs that happens to be it? Do you use quarantine in an external facility? Depending on the species, you need to think about, you can't put 5 different ecosystems in one rack and expect them all to be at 80 degrees. It's just not going to work. So now if I'm quarantining something that's montane, I have to set that up in my bathroom or in my kitchen or somewhere that's going to be cooler. And then whether I use heat or not, opposed to throwing it in the standard quarantine rack, which happens to be 82 degrees the whole year round. So you have to map that out ahead of time. And it comes down to the thing of, if you can't afford the enclosure, should you really be buying the animal?
Yeah.
There's been plenty of times when we've all got an animal at a show, or we were gifted an animal from a friend, or we just saw one and we're like, crap, man, I've always wanted that. I need to buy that right now while I can. And oh my God, I have nothing at home to put it in. And then you run over to Home Depot, or run over to Target or Walmart or Container Store and throw some together. We've all been there. We've all done that. But ideally, you want to have that worked out ahead of time. And if you're quarantining, then you definitely need to have some kind of thought as to how you're going to go about it, because I'm not going to get Price Eye from Cody and throw them in the same rack as my, juvenile carpets that are living at 82 degrees. It's not going to happen.
Well, there's a stress factor there too, the way I quarantine a Baird's versus how I'd quarantine the Jansenii when first getting those, those are two different animals. The Baird's isn't going to care. The Baird's is going to ride out quarantine, no problem. The Jansenii, that's one of those things, and Halmahair scrubs are probably a good example too. That's a high stress, high strung animal. And I'm not going to put it somewhere where I'm going to be in and out of the room constantly. The cat's going to be running around. My child's going to be running around. It's going to be in a dark closet, which is where I quarantine a lot of my stuff. And, if it was a Baird's, that'd be one thing. But when we're talking about something especially imported that are sensitive, be it chondros or goniosoma or scrubs, that requires that requires a little more thought than, quarantining a corn or king or Baird's or, and then Brent asked, have you two or anyone in the group ever kept Pacillonotus, the bird snakes? Billy Hunt has.
Billy Hunt's the man
right
with
now.
Pacillonotus. And dude, Billy's Pacillonotus are amazing. And like, I'm up to my elbows in arboreal stuff right now. For me, my level of elbows. But if I didn't have so many arboreal species as it is, I would totally get some from Billy when the time comes, because his animals are so nice looking, man. They're so cool to watch, and then feeding them it's a bit of a project, but you're having fun while you do it. It's not the annoyance of come on man, eat it, come on man, eat it, come on man, eat it. It's not like that. It's you're enticing the animal, and then when the animal does decide to prey, it's a show. It's awesome. Justin's going to see it firsthand in 2 weeks.
Yeah. And then Dr. Wyman said, under the topics of both diversity and challenging species, the trial and tribulations of working with import animals as it relates to both.
Excellent point, Doc.
So I guess before we answer that, we should answer the first question that we had lined up, which is, what's the most difficult species or most challenging species that we've kept? I guess in general, like in any aspect, what's been the one species that you consistently go, this is either very frustrating or this is most stress inducing.
So you want to go first? Because I have a very long one.
Yeah. Mine is simply just going to be chondros, honestly.
Yeah.
Out of all the snake species I've kept in my life, few have been more frustrating than chondros. And it's not that they're hard to keep. They're not. It's just when you're dealing with imports or you're dealing with, animals that just got shipped across the country, and just out of all the species I've kept, chondros are the ones that I've had the most issues with. Hasn't been boiga. The goniosoma have been a breeze. Granted, my scope with those is limited. None of the rat snakes have been a problem. It's chondros are the ones that I've consistently gone, why am I keeping these things?
And what advice could you give to someone that, it's hard to say advice in one sentence or one paragraph, but what is some advice you could give to someone that's really curious about doing the fresh import thing because they want to have a less expensive animal, or they want to have new genetics, or they see what's the word I'm looking for? They see potential in a particular specimen and they really want to focus on that because they like it. What's your advice for that?
Avoid it if you can.
Okay.
I mean, if someone I'm not going to tell someone not to get an imported chondro if they're dead set on doing it. It can be done. I think it's much easier if you've had the experience over time, not only just with the species but with imports in general. I just think you're really doing yourself a disservice when you're getting the cheap chondro is a Trojan horse in a sense, because they're almost guaranteed to have worms. Just that, and keep them in the same tub for as long as possible. And I mean, Dom brings up a good point. Her fresh import has cost her over $500 in vet care. Yeah. So yeah, you spent $250 on an imported Biak, but guess what? Now you're paying double that for the vet bill. You're spending $750 on a chondro. You could have bought a captive bred one.
Yeah.
For the same price. And probably had much more enjoyable time dealing with it.
Yeah. It's well put, man. It's well put.
What's yours?
So I've, not to sound like a cocky douche, but I've worked with a lot of species over the years. Most of them were not mine. The places that I've worked granted me the venue to really play with a lot of weird stuff over the years. And I was racking my brain this morning when you sent me the list. I was racking
Jeff
my brain.
brings a good point too, real quick. He said, I think who you get your imports from is also important, which is very true.
Absolutely. It also depends on who they got it from. You know what I mean? Because there's plenty of reputable pet shops that got it from a irreputable wholesaler or vice versa. You know, the wholesaler had the animal in tip-top condition and it went to a bad pet shop, you know, and who knows?
Right.
So going back to difficult species, I racked my brain as to what was really like, what stood out in my head as I probably don't want to do that ever again. And it wasn't, you know, for one reason or another, it was just collectively, it was a difficult species for me. And I picked 3 actually. And I have pictures of my animals from back when. The first one is actually a species that I don't think anyone has in the States right now. That would be what is, in my opinion, incredibly rare, and I'm going to butcher the scientific name, Aristocophus macmahonii, which is the leaf-nosed viper, or McMahon's viper. So here's a picture that we're going to share, because everyone's probably going, what the hell is that?
Not to be confused with McGregori.
Yes, correct. Very much different. So that is Aristocophus.
Oh, yeah. I haven't seen those in a long time.
Very long time.
I forgot those existed.
So these were captive bred in, oh man, I want to say Turkmenistan, which I don't even think they're native there. And we got them imported at Strictly in like 2007 or 2008. And they were incredibly hard to get to eat anything. And they lost weight pretty rapidly. Mm-hmm. And because of their desert nature, we were apprehensive to overly hydrate them. So we basically would miss them on occasion, and we kind of kept them on aspen for a while just because we were afraid to do sand. And what wound up working was we had lizards from Egypt that were, I don't remember what they were. They were some kind of like, you know, desert swift or something. Lizards from Egypt, and we wound up using them and rubbing them on a frozen thawed baby gerbil. Yes, it is a fancy Russell's. Thanks, Cox.
Irvin's here. Hi, Irvin.
Hey, what's up?
T-Dog.
So we wound up using the Egyptian lizard that was frozen, and we rubbed it on a frozen thawed gerbil pinky. And that's what we got them to eat. And we wound up selling them. I think they were $1,100 a piece at the time.
Damn.
And I realized that, money aside, I probably would never work with that species simply because I don't think I could replicate that now. I think it would be too difficult. Let alone getting gerbil pinkies was hard enough as it is.
Brendan Meyer says his were mangrove monitors. He said, "Never again will I work with them. The one I put such a bad taste in my mouth. 0 out of 10 would not recommend." And that's a good, you know, those and like the imported, the green tree monitors. I've never heard good things about imported tree monitors, unless it's someone, you know, like Forrest, who was very well prepared to deal with that kind of stuff. That's another one that I feel like people see at shows. They've got more money than sense. They buy it, and then it ends up just being a disaster because the animal's a complete spaz and probably doesn't want to chill out at all. And they usually just kind of all the ones I've seen, they look kind of rough, at least import wise.
Yeah.
I don't think they're being imported anymore, but when they were,
yeah,
I don't know. So I can see that being a tough one.
Most definitely. So this was the first species that honestly came to mind. The second species, going to another snake, this one's going to really piss off Justin, which is okay. I'm okay with it.
And if I'm wrong on any of that, please let me know.
The next one would be Atheris
yeah.
hispida. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Atheris hispida, this is the hairy bush viper, or the spiky bush viper, however you want to call it. This picture is a horrible picture because it was from an old LG flip phone, and this is the best I could get with it trying to bite the phone, and me being safe and all. That's actually a Henry Martinez says, wild-caught Indonesian dendrophilia. Give me anxiety. Yeah, we know your pain, Henry. But the hispida are naturally slug eaters in the wild, and they come from the central Congo regions of Africa. This specific specimen was my personal animal. We got, I think, 25 or 30 of them in on a shipment from, at the time, I don't even think it was Democratic Republic of Congo. I think it had a different name. I think it was, forgive me, I should know my geography on this one. It was still Congo region, but I think it was just called Congo at the time. It was like a southern, almost like Katanga province area. And this is also, on the same shipment, we actually got Naja Nana, which was previously Christii, water cobras. So it was, it was a very weird shipment. But we got these hispida, and everyone was like, well, what are we going to do? We're going to give them slugs? Like, what do we do? And there was no can of snails, there was no escargot from a Chinese food market. So I wound up getting green tree frogs, and I would rub the underside of an apple snail on a wild-caught Florida green tree frog, and the frog obviously hated it. And then I would hold the frog by the back legs while it was alive, and then put it in the face of the hispida, and the snake would bite it and eat the frog. And I would do that about 3 times a week, and it maintained body weight. And then I realized, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah.
Again, just like the McMahonii, I'm rubbing a snail onto a frog and then feeding it. And all I could think of was, this thing is probably loaded with parasites. The frog's probably got parasites from the snail. Who knows? Just by physical touch. And after about 6 to 8 months, I wound up, letting Strictly sell mine, and they had sold the other ones. I don't know whatever happened to it. But again, an amazing, amazing species, but the cons outweighed the pros.
I think that's just one of those species, man, that just was never made for captivity.
No, it just wasn't.
I mean, all the ones I've seen look really rough.
Yeah, even him. This specific male that I had.
That's the healthiest one I've seen.
That's the healthiest one. And he was housing 3 green tree frogs a week. And actually, towards the end, I'm pretty sure I got him eating green tree frogs because I had frozen a bunch of them, just so I wouldn't have to keep doing this whole scent thing. And he wound up taking green tree frogs with no snail scenting, which worked. But again, I was like, why do I want to keep doing this? So we got rid of him. At the same time, it wasn't as display showy as a squam. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And Ryan Cox asks, when I said apple snail, I mean giant apple snail. Yes, I did. Giant apple snails are invasive in Florida. You can find thousands of them in the canals. Luckily, our shorebirds and migratory seasonal birds, they love them. So they do a really good job at keeping the numbers down, but they're here to stay. So I know Strictly used to get bags of them and put them in their trough tanks with all their turtles and everything, just because it would help take care of the algae and stuff like that. And then the last species that I could really think of, I chose this species specifically because the husbandry wasn't difficult, but for whatever reason, I had trouble keeping them healthy, and I had a lot of trouble getting them to breed. And that would be Smog mozambiquensis. So Smog mozambiquensis is in the sungazer or girdle-tailed lizard family.
Cordylidae.
Cordylidae, yes. And they're one of the larger species. They obviously hail from Mozambique. The males get this fire red underside with the jet black dorsal. The females are sexually dimorphic as well. They're more of a slate gray color with no color underneath. basically the color of that rock that he's sitting on, a darker color of that is what the females look like. And when Marcus and I got really, really big into girdle tails, this is one of the main species that we wanted to work with. And we had a couple choice prime males. Marcus had a couple. I had this one. And then I probably had 3 or 4 females with him. Marcus had about 3 or 4 females. And my females were not doing well. And I didn't know if the male was picking on them or if the male was consuming all the food, but I could not get them to acclimate appropriately. I think it was a stress factor. I don't think I had the temperatures exactly right because Mozambique is such a huge country. They have so many different ecosystems, and depending on the time of the year, you have part of the country is dramatically closer to the equator than the other half of it. Mm-hmm. So not knowing exactly where these specific specimens came from made it really difficult. And again, there was no iNaturalist back then. You know, we couldn't really, shy of talking to someone who lived there, which again, Facebook hadn't blossomed yet. It was tough. So we wound up giving them all to a friend who lives, I believe, in Michigan, who's another Cordillus guy. And he has since had, like 7 or 8 litters from the animals that we gave him. And we just gave it to him. We're like, listen, man, you try your luck. So clearly it was something with either the South Florida climate, whether it be barometric pressure or my temperatures, or maybe we weren't feeding them enough. Maybe we were feeding them too much and they were stressed from the food. Who knows? But this particular species, although does very well in captivity, didn't do well for me.
Yeah. I can see it.
So sorry, that was a little bit of a rant there.
No, I mean those are good picks. Like I said, mine is just chondros, just because that's been the one that's been the biggest disappointment.
But
they're not hard to keep, but when they go downhill, they go downhill.
But not enough for you to abandon your love of them.
Although I will say, having lost that adult female, it has been a little discouraging. But I mean, the ones I have now, they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, if anything, it's kind of nice now that I can just worry about the colubrids and coast.
Yeah, it's good.
And then, so Andrew Keith, he said, would you move to a different state and completely start over, job, housing, etc., specifically to legally keep a species that is illegal in your state, but that you've also never kept? He said, little background on the question so you know where I'm coming from. I've only been in the hobby for about a year, but it's completely consuming. Any free time I get is spent trying to learn something about reptiles in general, or at least entertaining myself with YouTube. He said, I'm considering a move to a different state in the future solely to legally keep exotic venomous. I already have a copperhead and a cottonmouth, hoping to add some horridus this year and eventually try and get into some exotics. He said, I have no other reason to move, but I don't have much keeping me here either besides my job. Sounds extreme to most people. I'm curious what other people's take is on it. Also, for clarity, the plan would be to secure employment, move, and then try and find a mentor within reasonable distance that would work with me. I'm not trying to just move to a new state and buy a king cobra for my living room.
I'm glad he clarified.
Disclaimer.
What do you think, Smitty?
I mean, I think it depends a lot on your situation. So for me, up and moving my family, finding new jobs, finding a new school for my child, all those things to me are not worth it just to be able to keep something, you know. I've talked previously about how I'd love to keep arboreal vipers, be it Atheris or Trimeresurus or any of that stuff. And I may eventually, when the child gets older, when Ellie gets older. But right now, it's not going to happen. I'm okay with that. And that's part of the whole knowing your limits thing. You know, I had native venomous, and that was cool and all. But when it came to having a kid in the house, whether those cages were locked or not, I figured it was nothing could happen if they just weren't there in the first place. So it depends on your situation. I mean, if it's just you and the job is the only thing keeping you there, then, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah. I think that my experience is different than most in the sense that I was granted really good venues to learn what I liked and what I didn't like, and to work with a very, very wide assortment of animals. I would say that if you have nothing holding you back and you can look for another job and you want to do it, then do it. Like Justin said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Me personally, at this point in my life, there's nothing really in my box of goals that I would want to move specifically to do, because I kind of have the ability to work with when I want to work with where I'm at. I love Florida. I've made Florida my home. I'm in theory never leaving. Granted, if there was some dynamic legislation in one regard or another, that might change my opinion.
Be in South Carolina with me.
I'd be in South Carolina with you, or I'd be in Texas with Chris, you know?
Ooh, that's a tough choice.
Yeah, it's a tough choice. But I personally don't think that I would. If the juice is worth the squeeze, then go for it. But if it's not, then it's not worth it, because you can always take trips to work with animals. You can always go on excursions, and you know, COVID aside, you know, if you really want to go out west and work with rattlesnakes, then go out west and work with rattlesnakes. You know what I mean? Or if that's your passion, if that's your love, and you want to, you know, even dip your toe in, then do it. Because again, you'll miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So I say, you know, if nothing's holding you back and you want to do it, then do it. If it's something like I have to uproot my family, I have to change my career, I have to, you know, change my life, then you really need to ask yourself if it's worth it. You know?
Yeah, that's ultimately an answer that only you will have.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
because everyone's circumstance is different. Like I said, mine is you know, I got a mortgage and stuff. To go through the process of selling a house, finding a new house, you know, getting a mortgage on that one, and moving the family and the school thing and the work thing. It's just, to me, I wouldn't do it just solely to keep a species that I can't have.
Right.
You know,
right.
if it was like a job or something that, like, the pay would have to be very, very, very good for me to feel compelled to up and move my entire family. And even then, that's not entirely my decision. That's, you know, when you're married and stuff, there's someone else who has 50% say in that kind of stuff as well.
Oh yeah.
It's ultimately it's whether that's something that you find worth the time and resources to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing too is, you know, you just working off of this one example of what we've been given, no strings attached, can find another job, you know, thrill of it, you know, changing a new chapter of life. That's all awesome. But imagine if you moved to Florida because you want to work with manatees and you love manatees and you want to work with manatees, you want to work for a nature facility and swim with manatees and, you know, rescue manatees from, you know, ones that got, you know, hit by boats and stuff. And then you hate it and you go, man, I hate manatees. Now what?
These things suck.
These things suck. So I think you also almost have to feel it out first, you know, take that herp trip, visit that zoo, you know, make friends with people that keep stuff and see if you can, you know, enjoy their collections with them and live vicariously through them a little bit, and then see if it's really, if that juice is worth the squeeze. You know, you may find out that you hate lemonade. You go, crap, now what?
But you wouldn't have known had you not tried it.
Exactly. It's true. It's true. So.
And then Dr. Wyman had another one that I actually really like. You said not really part of any of the questions, but I would also like to hear what you guys have to say about the pervasive nature of the hobby/industry that pushes towards breeding over just keeping. It seems that too many conversations seem to revolve around your animals are old enough. Stop being lazy. You should breed them already. Blah, blah, blah. I see this so often without people giving serious consideration to who they are speaking to. Important things like 1, running out of room, 2, mental health, 3, physical demands, 4, just do not feel like it. Once upon a time, keeping for the sake of keeping was what the hobby was all about.
Okay. It's a great question.
This is interesting.
It's a great question.
So when I ask for you and Dom and Phelan's and Chris's and Billy's opinions on stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very easy when someone asks you what they should do.
Sure.
Because you're not the one that has to deal with it. If I say, hey, should I get some bimaculata, the ones I've been looking at, from, that are come from unknown sources, could be Europe, that have the potential to come with, man, me and Reed were talking about this earlier. I could not think of the name of, it's on the tip of my tongue. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Hold on.
And just for the record, Jeff, I do not hate manatees. They're beautiful, majestic creatures. Just an example, bro.
Crypto. For some reason, I've been drawing a blank on that all day. Crypto apparently is not uncommon from a lot of European collections, from what I'm told, by legitimate sources. So it's a question of like, A, is it worth, when it comes to that kind of stuff, is putting your collection at risk worth that kind of thing? Your friends may say, yeah, man, do it. But if something were to happen, it's not their animals that are paying the price or going downhill. Their collection isn't on fire.
It's true.
So it is kind of tough. And I don't think it's something anybody should be like pressured into doing. Like if you're in a group and people are like, just breed it already, do this, they're old enough. Like if you're not prepared, you're not prepared.
Yeah.
And that goes right back to knowing your limits and knowing yourself. Like running out of room, very easy to do. Anytime I decide if I want to breed something, I try to look at least 2 years down the road and say, what am I going to need space wise? In general, if I'm going to be breeding corns and bairds and cyanea and chondros, and like that's going to be a lot of babies. That's a lot of hatchling racks. So you got to think about A, how much money you're having to put into it. B, how much space you're going to have to allot to it. Mental health. I've been down that road too with the cresteds. I was so burned out on cresteds by the time that I decided to get out of them that I literally could not wait to get rid of them all and just focus on snakes. That's a very big thing. And that was one of those things where I told myself I was only going to breed like 2 or 3 females, and I ended up pairing like all of mine, which was like 5, which is fine and all, except for when you suddenly go from 0 to like 80 babies in only a matter of a couple months, a year. And that is one lesson I feel like people can tell you all day long. Pay attention to how many animals you're pairing, pay attention to how much you're producing. Because a lot of people are like, yeah, whatever. It's a clutch of 10 corns, whatever. Okay, well, when you have 5 corns laying 10 clutches,
yeah,
even if you don't have 100% hatch rate, that's still a lot of babies. That's still a lot of pinkies, which it's a little different if you're breeding your own mice, because that's not a problem. But mice are expensive. No matter where you get them from, frozen feeders are expensive, even just in the shipping. So like mental health, like that was, I knew I shouldn't have done it. But I told myself, I was like, it'll be fine. Paired everything. And by the time it was all said and done, that was the last season that I bred cresteds. I was like, this was stupid. I was really kicking myself for doing that. And that's one of those things that people can tell you constantly, but
it was stupid for you. It may not be stupid.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things you just need to be mindful. It's like, okay, am I prepared to deal with this many mouths to feed? Each animal is going to add a certain amount of time to your cleaning regimen each week. Be that a minute, be that 5 minutes, it does add up. And it's one of those, that's one of those lessons that I feel like people don't seem to understand until they go through it.
Right.
And after that, I have zero desire to make that happen again, unless it's, I guess it's a little easier with snakes, but they still add up. But like geckos and stuff, especially that have to eat, I fed mine like 3 times a week on diet. That took time. Making sure bottles were cleaned before I mixed more Pangea up. That took time. Making sure I had enough Pangea on a hand regularly. That took time and money. Pangea is expensive. You look at the price of Pangea diet per pound, it's like $20. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Physical demands. That's why I don't have ambient temps in my room, because it's hot and I don't like to sweat. If you have an ambient room and you're spending more time in there, it might as well be a sauna. And then just, not feeling like it. There have been plenty of times, and everyone's gone through this, where maybe they've had a shitty week or they've had a shitty day. And it's like the last thing you want to do is go in there and deal with a really pissed off chondro or, Karibo or Gonyosoma, whatever. That's just, and that's okay. They don't all, not every day has to be awesome and stellar. Like, it's okay to take a day off, but as long as it's not to the detriment of the animals, you're going to have days where you're like, this sucks. I don't like this. I don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
But as long as that's not every day, it's okay to have a couple off days, in my opinion.
Right. So Dominique says a great thing. Excuse me. She says, I think we need to remember that not every animal needs to be a breeder.
Mhm.
And if you don't breed anything ever, it doesn't delegitimize your place in the community or contributions to the hobby. And I think that's great.
I think that's where it's flipped a little
Mhm.
bit. Like social media has made it, everyone else is breeding, I should be too.
Right.
And see, my problem with that whole conversation, though, is it's very easy for me to say that when I'm the one breeding stuff, and when I get things, I tend to get it in pairs.
Sure.
So, am I a hypocrite for saying, you shouldn't buy stuff and be ready to breed it as soon as you get it or anything like that? I take some time with things before I pair them, before I decide to make more of them. I've talked about that, making sure you actually enjoy a species before you decide to make more of it.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, it's tough because it's hard for me to tell someone else you don't have to breed when I'm breeding, and that comes down to knowing your limits again.
But you also have animals that you don't intend to breed.
Yes.
So there you go.
I have my pair of Bredli. I don't know if I'll ever pair them. It's going to take my female a long time to get to size. I can tell you that. So maybe by the time she gets old enough, if my male's even still alive by then, we'll see. But it's one of those things where I just enjoy that species and I'm okay with having them whether I breed them or not.
Right. Yeah, totally. I come from a time when if you kept snakes, you really didn't breed them. They were just pets. And then there were breeders. And then I watched the transition over about 10 years where it was you weren't cool unless you were a breeder.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't know what you were doing unless you were a breeder. And I hated that to the point where I almost shunned private breeders because I was like, you're an asshole. You're just breeding it so that you can get, street cred and make money off of these living creatures. And obviously my thought process in that has highly evolved to the point where now I have projects that I'm going to work on, but it evolved not because I wanted to make money or because I felt like, oh, these animals are old enough, I'm denying them their reproductive rights. No, it was because I wanted to push my hobby to the next level in theory. Right. And I wanted to watch the miracle of life with these specific species. Mm-hmm. I have no morphs. I have nothing that's line bred. I just wanted to pair good looking animals and go from start to finish and give them the full life cycle and watch these babies. And, if I can give babies to friends or if I can sell babies, great. I know that this is a bottomless money pit for me and that I will never recuperate the funds that I've, exacerbated over the years. But I'm okay with that because this is what I love.
That's a big leg up too, is if you resign yourself to the fact that it's likely never gonna, you're never gonna make the amount of money you put into it.
Right.
And you're okay with that.
Yep.
I'd be happy if I could just get my stuff to pay for itself.
Right. And that's the goal of
completely content.
That's the goal of every person that wants to breed. That is the goal in some degree or another. Some people do it for a living. Some people do it because they love it. And then the perk is if you do sell them, I'll help you pay for a couple bags of rodents or whatever.
Right.
But we also have a big group of up and coming individuals that they need to remember that they will not pay their light bill or their water bill because they're hoping these eggs hatch. You can't do that. Mm-hmm. You got to do it because you love it. You got to do it because you want to enjoy it. The money might be the bonus. You know what I'm saying? Right. I would much rather give away offspring to friends or people I know that are going to cherish it and appreciate it mm-hmm. than get a couple bags of mice or maybe, a new rack or something. You know what I mean?
I think a lot of people in our circle, our gang, some of the NPR guys too, I'm seeing a shift where people are okay with that. They're not looking to make money off something. If I have a pair of bears and someone's like, hey, I'm super interested in these, I got plenty of friends that have gotten into Bairds. Brendan is a good example. He's into Bairds. Brendan was like, hey man, I want to get some more Bairds. Be like, I got you. Knowing that someone has a passion for a species or a genuine interest in a species, I have zero issues helping contribute to that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I have just to go back to my one buddy Chris with Valentino the carpet python. he got a pair of chondros from one of our good friends who is a former snake guy. There was only 2 snakes he had left, and he was moving, and he's like, hey man, I don't want these anymore. Just take them, give them a good home. And they were, he has a Wamina and a Lyra, both by Greg Maxwell. And
Nice.
they are probably 7 or 8 years old now. They are flawless. They are flawless in every degree of chondro essence, right? And I told him, I said, dude, breed these things. You know, they're gorgeous. You're going to have a great time. And he says, because he used to work strictly with me, he goes, bro, they live healthy lives. They enjoy their lives. I enjoy them. I'm not breeding. I said, but you don't want to, you know, make some babies and see the miracle of life? He's like, do you know how many baby chondros I've had to deal with over the years? Like
That'll turn you off.
Hundreds. So he had the ability to have that experience. But I also think that deep down, had he never had that experience, he still wouldn't breed them, because he just doesn't need to. He's enjoying them for what they are. So
yeah, I mean, I completely agree with Dom that it's become this thing where, you know, if you're not breeding, you're not legit.
Right.
See, and my only issue there is people giving advice on breeding something they've never bred, where they're just regurgitating information they found online.
Yup, and I was waiting for you to bring that up. Excellent.
Like, there's something about hands-on experience to me that holds a lot more weight than someone's, you know, reading something off of MBF or another group post or whatever, any of the forums or something. It's like, I could go and find that information. You know, like most of the time, if I have a question when it comes to breeding, it's something a little more specific that, you know, maybe I can't find any, like with Boiga. I don't know. I just, like, when I have someone who chondros being a good example, you know, they just they've been in chondros for all like 6 months, and they're saying, you know, giving people advice on how to breed. That makes me a little nervous. Not that the information that they say is necessarily wrong, but to me, it's like, I personally, if I saw that and I was new into something and I had never done it myself, like, yeah, I may have read all the books and know all the stuff, but I'm going to let the guys that have actually had the hands-on experience and have produced multiple clutches chime in, because I don't feel like I can really contribute anything other than what anyone else could find online.
Yeah. Very true. I also think that someone who says, I want to breed coastal carpet pythons, right? And they go out and they buy a pair of proven breeders where, you know, someone was breeding snakes and they got a baby on the way, whatever. And hey,
look at that luscious beard.
Look at that handsome man.
What up?
What up? So I see someone who wants to get coastal carpets, and, you know, somebody is having a baby or they're moving and they want to get rid of their animals, so they buy these proven breeders, and the first year they breed them and they're successful, and congratulations to them, kudos to them, but that does not give them any friggin' clout. And that's, oh, I did this, I did that. No, you did a great job. You know, your animals look good, they're healthy, you produce great animals, but you got to get off that high horse, because you didn't earn any clout in that regard. And maybe that's dickish of me to say that, but I would never, if I got water pythons last year, right? Let's say I got adults and I burn them this year. That does not make me the water python guy. It doesn't, because there's plenty of other people that have been doing it way longer than me that I have to look up to and focus on and learn from them. And eventually one day, maybe I will be the water python guru, but you can't just jump online and, you know what I mean?
I think a lot of that is, you know, when someone asks me advice on, you know, when it comes to green trees or the Boiga, you know, I'm going to tell them from my experience, what did I do when it came to incubating eggs? And even then, what I've done with incubating eggs with the Boigas, I talked to Chris, I don't even know how you pronounce his last name. It's like Lugverd. He's overseas in Europe.
Yeah,
he told me what he does, and I've adopted that, and it's worked. When it came to pairing them, it's like I can only speak to my experiences, what I've noticed. It may be different for somebody else. I don't speak in terms of like, this is how I did it, so that's how it should be done. It's very much this is what worked for me. Try it. It might work for you. It might not. If not, here's some people you should hit up a message and talk to them about it.
Yeah. And you know damn well that guy Chris, who is literally the
I don't think anyone
quintessential,
bred more Boyga than that guy.
he is the quintessential Boyga expert of Boyga husbandry and captivity and all that jazz. I guarantee you he still looks to other people that have been doing things longer than him or differently than him to get their opinion and get their advice. I guarantee.
That's why Lowe's has the best slogan, never stop improving.
Oh, what happened to Bill?
I don't know. Maybe he froze.
So did we answer the question appropriately, or we tangent?
I think we did.
I think we did. Okay.
I don't think anybody has to breed to be legitimized, but when you roll up into groups and you start talking like you've got it all figured out and you've done it all, you're not going to make any friends that way, because people like you and myself who've been in it for an extended period of time see right through the bullshit. And if you're going to do that, your information better be on point, because people are going to make you look real stupid real quick.
And Eric and Owen have talked about this too countless friggin' times, is don't go into a group and say, hey, he got a Wi-Fi in the snowstorm. Well, hopefully you come back, Bill. Eric and I would talk about this constantly, where somebody jumps in a group and they're like, I just got this adult pair. How do I breed them? Like, you can't do the homework that we all did.
See, that's not even my initial reaction. My initial reaction is, what's the rush?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a great point.
Why? Why?
I'm guilty of that. I got a male gecko from a guy upstate, and the gecko looked prime, man. He was ready to rock and roll, and the previous owner had already cooled him for me. And I was talking to one of my friends, and I was like, dude, I can't wait to pair this gecko up. He's like, why? I was like, because he's primed and ready to go. He goes, so what? He's like, leave him chilled, leave him in this thing, do it next year. I was like, get a point.
Why Bruce Lee said it best, man. He said it's not about the destination, it's about the journey.
It's true. 100%.
Enjoy the ride, enjoy the process. If you get younger animals, like what Brennan was saying, buy babies, grow them up, successfully breed them. You get so humidity. We'll get back to Thomas in a second. I get so much more satisfaction in knowing that I raised up some Bairds over the last 2 or 3 years, that they'll be ready. They'll be going into hibernation again at the end of this year, and they'll be bred next year. I'll get a lot of enjoyment. The corn project, I've had that female for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
That's going to be so much more satisfying to me that I spent, you put in the sweat equity and the time and stuff into raising these animals up, that you get the babies, then whoever, buys an adult pair, throws them together, they get babies. Cool. They may get a satisfaction out of it, but for me, it's the process. It's enjoying the species while you have them, and like learning the quirks of the individual animals and these things like that. It's one of those things. Breeding is kind of just a plus.
Yeah.
Just like you were saying, I breed the stuff I breed because I genuinely enjoy the species, and I think it's cool as hell to make more Cyanea. It's cool as hell to produce more Bairds. One of the good points that I think was brought up on NPR too, is if all these species were worth $1, at that point, would you be working with something you really enjoy, or would you be working with something that, maybe puts some extra money in your pocket that you don't necessarily enjoy?
Yeah.
But Thomas said humility goes a long way to learn anything. Being an arrogant asshole is the quick way to gain nothing, even if you have the skills to back it up, which is true.
Yep. Wholeheartedly.
And Dom asked, do you think there should be a set amount of time an animal should be in your collection before you attempt breeding, to monitor for health issues or anything?
Personal opinion. Some people don't care. They just throw them together. And if something bad happens, that's on them.
Mm-hmm.
We all have our quarantine procedures, whether it be 60 days, 90 days, 200 days, whatever it is. I've had animals that, I'll be honest, I still have animals that are in quarantine from from 2019, because I can't shake mites in this rack. I have this one quarantine rack, and I can't shake it. And I finally figured out what it is, and it's grapevine.
Oh yeah, all those cracks and crevices and stuff, dude.
That's what it is. So
the hell out of that stuff.
So I've upped my mite kill, and I've been more monitoring and attentive to it. And I got rid of all the grapevine because it's the bane of my existence.
I hate using grapevine. It like every time I've used it, it turns black in like a week.
Yeah. So the only thing that has grapevine in it still is my female brittles enclosure because it's done up naturalistic, and it's so dry in there. It's honestly like it's a desert in there.
See, in that context, it's great. Like it's perfect for dry enclosures, but you're using it for like Amazons or anything tropical or subtropical. It is a nightmare.
Yep. And I'll tell you what has the mites is one is the Darwins and one IJ. And it's just like, I couldn't figure out, like, where the frig are these mites coming from? Like, I've done this for a year now, almost over a year. And I keep them in quarantine for that. But normally I do 90 days normally, you know? So
there's actually a really good PDF on mites.
Yeah,
I'm going to upload it to the group because that will tell you a lot about not only just like the life cycle, but you know, how they prefer dark spaces, humid spaces, talks about their life cycle and everything like that. And it is very informative. I really liked it. I learned a lot from it. But
yeah.
Oh. You want to do over unders?
Well, is there any more questions or no?
No, I think that was all of it. Well, no, I take that back. So Thomas asked what the best source is to learn more about Boiga, books, websites, fellow keepers, etc. Top 5 cigars from last year. So Boiga, there's a Boiga group on Facebook, and you guys know that I'm not the biggest fan of Facebook groups, but this one is pretty pleasant. Not a whole lot of bullshit. Thomas, I'll send you an invite to it tonight or tomorrow if I forget. There's you two. There's old forums that I found helpful when I was breeding mine, and I had that swelling thing. You know, remember the swelling with the hemipenes and stuff. I'm gonna write about that in the article because there was no information other than an old forum post on some Boiga forum, you know, in 2011.
Right.
So I mean, there's really not any books, unfortunately. I'm hoping that changes at some point in the near future. As much as Chimera has been, you know, done as much as they have, I'm kind of surprised there hasn't been one done yet. But I could see that being more about maybe the natural history and, you know, the species in the genus across the range, because there's a lot of species of Boiga that we don't have in captivity, especially here in the States. Over in Europe, they have a couple more that we don't see over here often. And then top 5 cigars from last year. See, that's tough. If we're talking about cigar releases, I don't really know how many I tried that I can think of off the top of my head. But as far as like new stuff that we got in last year at the shop, the Aganorsa Guardian of the Farm, they came in 3 sizes. The JJ, which is like a 5x52, I think. That has become one of my favorite cigars, bar none. Like, I need to buy a box of those things because that blend with that size works so well. And every time I smoke it, I'm like, damn it, these things are good. So the Genetic Deformity Neanderthal from Romacraft. So that one's different because it has not only the Connecticut broadleaf that you get on the Cro-Magnon, but also that Ecuadorian Habano that you get on the Aquitaine. I really enjoyed that one. So that's 2. We recently... The My Father Connecticut, we finally brought that back after it being gone for about 2 years. That's a great Connecticut on the market. Got a little more flavor to it, a little more punch to it than other Connecticut's. The La Promesa from My Father was also a good one. That one was released last year. After the La Grande Oferta came out, I really hated that cigar. I tried it multiple times. I can't get into it. I was losing faith in My Father, honestly. It was that bad. But the La Promesa came out and completely restored my faith in that company. And the cigar of the year, that Aging Room. Which one was that?
Quattro.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that one too. That's a good smoke. So that's mine. I'm
the wrong guy to ask that because I smoke all old shit. it's kind of like new electronics. Let everyone else test it for a year or two before I buy it.
Okay, so I'm gonna take the La Promesa back. I gotta put that Dunbarton Tobacco Sin Compromiso in there because I'm gonna have to bring you one of those, dude. Those are so good. It took me at first I wasn't crazy about them. I was kind of like, they're all right. They're expensive. They're okay. But the more I smoked them after they sit in the humidor for a little while, boy, that is a good smoke. It's like $17.95 for the biggest one, the biggest size. But oh my god, it's worth every penny.
Nice. So over and unders.
Well, hold on, Jeff.
Oh.
Jeff said, "What's the superior Morelia?" We already know that.
We already know that. Spreados.
He said, "What are you guys most excited about moving forward involving THP or THN as a whole?" He said, "Who are your role models in the hobby, and what are some ways they inspire you? There are different ways to cut a cigar. What are some of the advantages of the different cuts, and which do you use or recommend?" So we can do the cut thing real quick.
Yeah.
V cutters, these Kaleri ones, I love it. It's a great cutter.
It's like the best gift anyone's ever given me. Smitty, thank you.
Most lighters have a punch on it, which basically a punch is almost like a biopsy. You just plug a little hole in the end of it. And then you have straight cuts, which is just your straight blades, your traditional cutter. And I don't think you don't see a difference as far as flavor goes between the three of them. It really boils down to personal preference. It's nice to have a punch on hand if you don't have a cutter with you, like they're handy for that. But I mean, I'm a V cutter guy because I can just cut something and not have to think about it. I don't have to worry about cutting too deep. Right. My only gripe with these is if you get into thinner cigars like Coronas and Lanceros, you can cut too deep on these because the sort of the pocket is pretty deep and the cut itself is deep. So it boils down to personal preference and what you like. I don't notice any difference in the flavor.
Remember, children, cut them deep, you weep. Cut them thin, you win. Which is why when you do a straight cutter, the traditional, Grandpa says don't put your finger in it cutter. I actually prefer the ones that are only one-sided. So the back of the cutter is completely flat. And that gives you probably, maybe a 1/16 of an inch, maybe, or less.
It's the same thing to these. You can only go so far.
Right, you can only go so far. But I like it because it doesn't matter if I have a super duper thin Lancero or I got a big 64 gauge. It butts up to it flat. And I'm only cutting off that, couple thou that's on there. Because I'm guilty of it too. I'm talking to someone, I'm not paying attention. I stick the stick in and I go to cut it and I cut the whole damn, crown off. And
it's especially tricky with torpedoes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
Stuff like this, the ones with the pointed tips, it's very easy to cut too far on those. That one does require a little bit of finesse, but you can still use V cutters on torpedoes.
Sure. I've actually, it's funny you mentioned that because I was going to say is I've used V cutters at an angle on a torpedo, and I'll do it just almost like a diagonal slit on the side of it, which gives a unique draw because if I'm putting it in the side of my mouth because I'm doing something, but I've also done the double V or an X pattern, if you will.
Yeah, I call it the crown cut is kind of what I call it. And that's basically, so you'll take this and you'll cut it. Actually, I'll do it on one of these right now. I'll show you.
Yeah, show us. Do it. Bacardi and Cola. Do it.
I'll do it on this Roma Craft.
But once you start smoking a lot, you'll notice that certain wraps or certain brands, whatever, maybe have a tighter draw, or you may desire a tighter draw or a weaker draw or whatever. And there you go. So Justin's cut it once.
The one cut.
Right.
And then you cut it the other way, and it creates an X or a plus sign or whatever you want to call it.
Or a crown. If you have a bigger gauge, like 62 and plus, some guys will do 3 cuts and make it look like an actual crown. Under crown cigars, they'll do that a lot with a really, really sharp one. And for the photos and the magazines and stuff, they'll take a little file and they'll just shave it down so it looks like a perfect, king's crown. But I like to do the X cut or the crown cut because it gives me way more draw, especially if something's tighter.
I will say these Perdomas are not very complex, so the flavor you're going to get from start to finish is going to be about the same. Some cigars you'll get like that Leaf Sumatra that was in that last sampler. That's a good example. That one starts out with some white pepper, and then it gets into this sort of citrusy orangeness to it, and then the last bit is like milk chocolate. It's very odd because you'll notice it transition sort of if you're really paying attention to it. But
and it's funny because the first time I smoked that, Justin didn't tell me like what to expect, and then I got to that back third, and I was like, man, this is sweet. Like, what is this? Like, I couldn't put my tongue on it, you know. And he's like, it's white chocolate, and my mind was blown. I was like, you're correct. It's crazy. It's crazy. So, cover cutters pretty well, right?
What are you most excited about involving THN?
I'm excited that this year for THP, obviously I'm more immersed in it now, and I'm eternally grateful for that because, you know, I love this crew, I love our friends and our community, and you know, for a long time I was out of it, and now I really feel like I've been able to immerse myself in it thanks to you and Billy and Jake and everybody else. And I'm really eager to see some of the up and coming people that we have scheduled for the year, and a lot of, you know, having repeat people back on is always fun. And I really like the diversity of the network, because even though you and I are snake guys through and through, you know, we keep other animals, we have appreciation of other animals, and like, you know, getting Colonian people on, and, you know, more gecko people and salamander people, and like, it's going to be awesome, man. It's just going to be a beautiful kaleidoscope of herpetofauna, and I'm excited about it. I'm stoked. You know, 2021's only been going for a month and a half now, and it's been pretty good for me. It's been pretty good for friends and starting fresh, and I'm excited, man. I love it.
I mean, it's been growing like crazy. I'm going to look at where we're at right now as far as stats, but I mean, we're well over 114,000 plays on SoundCloud alone.
Wow.
Total, like lifetime.
Wow.
Which, given next month is actually going to be 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah, we're 100,000, 14, 937,000. 114,937.
It's awesome.
973. So
it's awesome.
It's been,
like,
it's been crazy, man. It's just so
And
awesome.
I love, maybe it's the social media aspect. Maybe it's because we're putting out a good product. I don't know. I don't want to call it that, but the interaction with everyone has just been awesome, man. Like, I get, like I was saying earlier, like people message me on Instagram with, whether it be just saying, hey man, I listened to the show and it's awesome, I love it, or hey, I didn't know you like those, let's talk about those. And like, it's really, really been a big part of my life, and I'm so happy to be part of it, and I'm so eager to see what the rest of it's going to unfold.
And Thomas asked, do y'all rest cigars after shipment? I found that I am more likely to smoke a bad cigar if I don't. There is actually something to that. So actually, when we had Steve Saka from Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust at the shop a couple months ago, he talked about that and how he wished retailers would kind of give the cigars some time to rest in a humidor before they got put on the shelf. You know, obviously he realizes that a lot of shops probably aren't going to do that. They want to get it out as soon as possible because you can't sell things that aren't out and available for sale. But I have found with a lot of cigars, we'll initially get them in. I'll crack open a box, I'll pull one out, and I'll smoke it right then and there. And I won't be crazy about it. But then if I give it, you know, a month or so, 2 weeks, and come back to it, it has had some time to really sort of, you know, there's off-gassing, you know, with ammonias and stuff like that. It has had time to really mellow out some and get a lot smoother. So I do agree. I try to, like, if I notice a box is getting low, I do try to, because they all come wrapped up in cellophane most of the time, or some, not cellophane, but plastic, basically. So I do try to cut them out, cut that plastic off, and give them some, let them breathe, you know, before I replace that box on the shelf. With as many cigars as we have, sometimes that's harder to do, but, you know, I do agree. Sometimes they do need some time. Who's your role models, though, Phil?
Oh, geez.
What are ways they inspire you?
I've got cliche ones, and I've got, you know, ones that people may not expect. Excuse me. Let me clear my throat real quick. Excuse me. I hate saying it because it's almost cliche at this point, but we always make the joke about how Rob Stone is our hero, but the man's very, very impressive in a multitude of venues, and his knowledge base aspires me to learn more, and his attentiveness to husbandry inspires me to be more proactive in my animals' enclosures and my general, observation of them.
See you later, Brent.
And I don't know. I definitely think that he is one. I'll be honest. Billy Hunt is a major mentor to me in ways that he doesn't even realize.
I wish I could have his level-headedness.
Yeah,
I've never seen Billy upset.
Well,
like legitimately pissed. Like, you know how I get riled up over some stuff, certain things.
Right.
And I'm like, if I could just have that robotic spirit that Billy Hunt has.
But see, that's the thing.
It's like the Terminator.
But see, he's not a robot, and I don't want to call him. I know you're joking, but like, it's a level of rationale that I aspire to attain by thinking outside the box and saying, okay, this is what happened. This is how I can do this. This is how I can do that. But I meant more in the sense of his time management and his general passion for his animals is breathtaking. And his ability to adapt his animals to be set up, man. Like, there's no qualms. He's like, okay, I want to get into this. This is what I have to do. This is what I'm going to do. And he deploys it. And it's awesome, man. He's an awesome individual.
How many times have I been like, damn it, Billy, get mad about something just for once?
He's
like, no, man. He's like, it's not worth getting upset about. And I'm like, yes, it is.
He's vented to us his frustration.
Yeah, but it's never like it's I don't want to use the word watered down in a bad way, but it is very like subdued. He's just he's very in control.
He is. He's very in control. He is. Trying to think of someone else who
Nipper?
It's hard. Most definitely Nipper. 110% Nipper. Nipper is awesome because Nipper will message me on Facebook with amazing animals, and we'll talk about them, and then he'll also send me, hilarious reverse jokes, and it's just I genuinely aspire. Like, how do I phrase this? I wasn't going to say Nipper because I don't want to give him a big head because I love the bastard.
Yeah, we know that's what's going to happen.
But I wasn't going to say him because I don't want to put him on that pedestal.
You don't want to give him the satisfaction?
No, I don't want to put him on the pedestal for me because I like the relationship that we've developed, and I don't want it to be like, oh my God, Nipper messaged me again. Like, I don't want to fangirl over him. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No.
But dude, like, I look at his experiences in life with everything from work and family and friends, and he's traveled the globe.
Yeah.
And he has seen sights that I will see one day, hopefully with him. And that is probably, I would say, hands down, he's probably the most motivational person that I have in my life right now. In all manners of the word, both in mental and physical and reptilian, So Nipper 100%. And I really wasn't going to say him, but I can't not because it fills all those checklists,
Yeah. I can't really disagree with any of those. I mean, just something I've been super interested in as of late is sort of just the philosophy and mindset behind what we do.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that I appreciate the most about Rob is the fact that he can articulate it so well. And when he talks about it, it's just the stream of consciousness that, like me, when I talk about this, we see it all the time. Like, I stutter and I lose my train of thought mid-sentence and stuff like that. Like with Rob, it's all very like, it's just there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like his overall philosophy with stuff is all things I really agree with, and I wish there was more of in the hobby. And like, that's something that we've done, with the Repticart streams. I've tried to take that approach of like, I don't necessarily want to know how you're keeping the animals. I want to know why you keep them the way you keep them. You know, and with the industry spotlights in the magazine and stuff, it's like, I could ask you all the questions about how you're keeping, I don't know, like Frank Payne is the next industry spotlight in the magazine. I could ask him how he keeps the flying lizards all day long, but that doesn't really tell you anything about him. Like, I want to know why he's focused on those. Like, why is he focused on carpet chameleons and not veils and panthers and all the other stuff? Like, why do you do the things you do? And why do you like, what was your mindset behind going the route you did and sort of trying to figure out how to breed flying lizards? Because he and one other guy apparently are the only ones in the country that have done it. It's like there's something there like that can be learned for everybody, whether you're keeping ball pythons, whether you're keeping Boellen's pythons, whether you're keeping flying lizards or you're keeping bearded dragons. Like, there's something to be learned from the philosophy side of things. And that's, I think, why I've been so hooked on that lately and wanting to know sort of the how and why people came to the way that they do things. And that's one of the things about Rob and, talking to Matt Most and stuff too. Those are guys that it's one of those, they in a sense, they like keep their head down and they focus on the species that they're doing. And they really focus hard on cracking the code on some things and figuring some things out. And, like Nipper's a good example of that too. Nipper's got some stuff where like the Langaha, the leaf nose snakes. It's not everybody is successful with those. And he's been doing great. Ryan Dumas is another one with those in particular. He's been having a lot of success with keeping those and them doing really well and lizards and stuff like that. And it's just that like a lot of the guys that have been in the hobby a long time, that's what I really want to get down and know. It's like, I could ask you how to take care of these things. And it's probably not going to be a whole lot different than how I'm doing it.
Right.
I mean, they may have some sort of secret trick or something, but I want to know just how you go about establishing hard, Gonyosoma. Like Rob is a good example of that. Like, what have you done and why have you done that? And what have you observed that, maybe other people might have missed? It's just, there's philosophy side of it is just something that I've been absolutely obsessed with lately. But Nipper's cool too. And Billy's awesome. We all love Billy. Casey's drive to focus solely on one species, like Brettles, is really impressive. I think there's a lot to be learned from that. Obviously, the guys at NPR, Eric, I love being able to talk to Eric and stuff all the time. He's always super helpful, and I think he kind of approaches things in a similar manner, where he's more interested in the how you got there rather than how you did it.
Yeah.
So,
I also think another one that I look at. I don't talk to him on a regular. I don't talk to him at all. He probably has no idea who I am, and I'm okay with that. It's not about that. But like Nathaniel Frank from M Toxins.
Yeah.
Dude,
he's awesome. He listens to the show. Like when we had him on, like, and I said, "Hey, would you be willing to come on, this podcast?" He's like, "Oh yeah, dude, I listen to you guys all the time." I was like, "What?"
So damn it, he's going to hear this.
I don't know if he listens to this, but I know he listens to THP.
Yeah, that's fine. So I watch his growth of his passion and his business and the things that he is doing to promote venom research and saving lives is phenomenal. The venom that he is extracting and giving to the medical world is there's no better synonym than life-saving.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not just going for antivenin, it's going for cancer research and diabetes research and just breaking down enzymes and peptides and proteins and us being able to learn from it. And his collection is that he's amassing. And part of me is a little envious because I'm like, crap, if he gets it, he's just going to breed it and keep all the babies for himself. Mm-hmm. So like that's kind of poopy in that regard. But the work that he's doing, the facility that he's built, like that's the passion, man. That's it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed having him on. He's a very easy guy to talk to, and one of the things about his episode that stood out to me the most was him and, talking about ego. And, he used to post on Instagram a lot, especially on his stories and stuff. And he pulled back and he said, I just realized, after a while, like my ego is just kind of getting out of hand. Yeah. And I think that takes a lot of, not necessarily courage, but to be able to take a step back and say, okay, I'm getting out of hand. I don't think a lot of people could do that. Like they may be fully cognizant that it's happening, but few people have the will to go ahead and say, all right, I know what I need to do to change it.
Yeah.
And especially in the venomous world where that kind of stuff just runs rampant, And,
oh yeah.
That's talking to hit like guys like him and Jack Vicente. Jack Vicente, having him on to talk about coral snakes was awesome. Like, it's guys like that, man. Like, we need to learn as much as we can because we're not getting any younger.
Yeah.
Tim Morris is another one. I talk about Tim a lot, and I like that because Tim's done a lot in the world of chondros, and he's an open book. He's fully willing to share all of it.
Yeah.
And Brian Fry. Yeah. True self-introspection is a rare trait. It is, Thomas.
Yeah, Tom. What's the next question?
I think that was all of them.
Okay, cool.
But we have some over and unders.
Yeah, we do.
Ryan Cox. I asked the group to throw some at us.
Right.
And the first one is dart frogs. Overrated, underrated.
Oof. It's tough. I'm going to say...
We're going to say in general, not necessarily like thumbnails over like dendrobateds, just dart frogs.
I'm going to say underrated.
Por qué?
I'm going to say underrated because so many people see them not set up. I don't want to say correctly, but not set up to the nines. You know what I mean? And I feel like dart frogs specifically, even over like Mantellas, dart frogs, part of it is not just keeping the animal, it's the husbandry of it. It's that window into the forest floor. And the
Jeff
natural... And Jeff says, of course he does. So setting them up legitimately and getting it going and having your own little group of frogs and watching the forest floor and the dynamics of their interaction with one another and
everything grow and take off.
Yeah, and all of that is just breathtaking, but you don't always see that. And I feel like the reason why is because there's people that keep them like that, and there's people that keep them because they just like the dart frogs, which is cool. It's fine. But I think people see the big elaborate thing and they go, well, I can't do that. I'm not going to do that. And that makes it underrated.
Well, that's how it was for me. I remember as a kid wanting dart frogs and seeing the setups and the things involved, and I was like, man, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of maintenance and stuff. And of course, once you become an adult and you're financially independent and stuff like that, and you can do whatever you want. And I will agree that in general, that I think they are underrated. I do think there are some groups and species that are overrated.
Sure.
But in general, I do think if more people tried them out, even if it was just like one tank of one of the smaller species, I think they'd realize just how cool they are. And they're not nearly as difficult as I think there's that old myth husbandry kind of thing from back in the day where people thought that they had to be kept, super specific in certain parameters. And it was, the 90s way of doing things. I think now, like, they are a lot easier than people think they are.
I'm going to expand on something. The same way that we set up a fish tank in preparation for fish, in terms of getting the tank established, would you recommend that with darts?
Yeah. Most people will tell you, like, get it planted and then wait a month or so. And that's mostly just so the plants cycle out any fertilizers and stuff they have, and it gets time to like root. If you're keeping bigger species like Phyllobates, Terribilis and stuff like that, the mints and like some of the bigger Tinctorias, you definitely want to make sure those plants are kind of taking off and growing because they're so big they just kind of trample everything. And so if you have a small cutting of something that's hasn't really taken root yet, I think it's kind of DOA when you just throw frogs in there. But
okay,
a month is kind of what you'll see is recommended. Most of the time, some guys like Reed, he'll say just give it, 2 or 3 weeks or whatever. But I always waited about a month before I put anything in there just to make sure it was all doing okay. And all the chemicals and stuff that might have been in there, if you're misting it still regularly, you're kind of washed away into the residual stuff and whatnot.
Yeah, cool.
The next one Cox had for us was anoles.
Under.
In the hobby.
Under. I do. I think they're underrated. I think people look at them as a cheap, almost trash lizard that is used as a feeder or a center. And I think that if people sat back and watched them in a naturalistic enclosure, much like you would darts, I think they would really appreciate what they are.
I would have to. So greens, I would say are. I don't even know if they could be rated as overrated because there's not enough people legitimately keeping them. I think they require a lot more than people think they do.
Yeah.
Like they need a much bigger setup than I think people realize. It's not like you can just get a group of 3 and keep them in a 10-gallon. Like, we're talking about something that would, if I showed you the dimensions, you'd go, that's actually huge for those lizards.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like the genus in general and that whole group, this website is definitely worth checking out. I just posted in the comments. There's so many species between, the Caribbean and the Americas that we don't have in the hobby that are just so stunning that you would see that and you would think there's no way that's related to the little green and brown animals that we have here in the, in the Southeast. And it's mind blowing. Like, so in that aspect, I think they're super underrated. Cuban night animals. There's some things coming out with them. Like Ron St. Pierre's doing some really cool stuff with those, or at least he was at one point. I don't know if he still is, but they're neat. And you see some of these species down in, South America and stuff, and it's just, they're unbelievable and how gorgeous some of these are. And it kind of makes you appreciate the, the species we have here a little more, because that there's more to them than just that.
Yeah. Even so far as like the sexual dimorphism of them, and then like mating colors and dewlap colors, and like anyone who lives in South Florida who sees all the different invasive species we have in terms of anole wise, you'll be sitting down on your patio having a cup of coffee and you'll see stuff, some will come out and bask and they'll start dewlapping and head bobbing for female. Entertaining. Yeah. And the dynamic is just, it's awesome. It's like a soap opera, man. It's awesome.
Yeah. That's a good.
It really is. So.
All right. So the next one, small hooks for small snakes. I'm assuming he's like, I don't know if we're talking about like the mini hooks that you get from like the small size hook that like Get Hook makes, or if we're talking about like the Brahms 3D printed like micro hooks, the pen hooks.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
It doesn't matter. Both, all of them. Small hooks, tiny hooks.
I think I prefer shorter hooks over longer ones, depending like with non-venomous stuff.
Yeah, I'm not talking about length of shaft. I'm talking about actual size of the hook head and the hook shoe.
I got you. I'm talking about the whole thing, the whole package.
Oh, okay.
Those little pen hooks, I didn't think I'd use them as much as I did, and I brought the idea to David, and I was like, "Here's what I think I need for baby chondros," and he knocked it out of the park. And I freaking love that thing. I use it for all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And even then, like I have a small, I don't know, it's not even 2 feet. It's just a short hook, and I love shorter hooks. I just find it easier to maneuver snakes with them. The Gonyosoma and stuff, they're way longer than those hooks, but for whatever reason, having that shorter hook, I come to prefer smaller hooks.
Yeah. So I say that small hooks and short hooks they have their place, and I use them in their place. So I think it's species specific. Taking venomous out of it, that little pin hook from Brahms is friggin' amazing. I use it with the baby radiateds that I have for Billy, because if I stick my hand in there and I go rummaging around the aspen, it's going to get it defensive. It's going to see this giant hand coming at it. We're talking about something the size of a cocktail straw. So I'll just use that pin hook to just scoop it up and then place it in my hand. And then everyone's happy. Everyone's cool, opposed to this big giant monster hand coming at you.
The kielbasa fingers.
They're big old kielbasa fingers. Now, at the same time, I've also had, that little metal retractable one that has the ballpoint pen clip on it, so you can clip it on your shirt like an old man. I've used those for tons of stuff. And it wasn't so much like, oh, I'm going to get bit. It was more just like ease of moving animals, like baby drumroll boas that were nippy, baby berms that were nippy. Just scoop them up, put them in the container, scoop them up, put them, you know, if I had a rack with 100 baby drumrolls in it, I'm not going to grab each individual one or try and cradle it in my hand and be all nicey. I'm just going to scoop them up with the retractable hook, put them in the container, clean the tub, put them back. You know, it was easy. Certain species, I think, don't react to a small hook as well as you'd think. Like that jag I got from Billy, that thing is a lunatic. It's extremely defensive. So I've learned that if I try and use a hook, he's going to spaz out on me. But if I just go in there and just cover him with my hand and pick him up like a ball in my hand, then he may strike at my face, he might strike at my other hand, but at least I have him in my hand. He's chilling in my hand. So in terms of venomous, I think that a mini hook is essential. The neonate hook from Get Hooked is probably my favorite neonatal hook.
I think that's the one that I'm talking about.
I use that with the wrinkles, and I like it because it's just long enough that if I have something that is small enough to fit on that hook shoe, I'm far enough away that I'm clear of danger. However, if I chose to choke up on the shaft, I can, and almost hold it like a pencil or hold it in my hand almost like a drumstick, and I can choke up on it and make it shorter, essentially. I also like the fact that it's long enough that if I have to use both hands for whatever reason, I can just throw it under my armpit throw it under my armpit and just do what I got to do.
And they're lightweight. And
they're extremely lightweight.
Which is a big plus. I don't really like heavy hooks. I don't know about you, but
I'm the guy that says you train in the beginning with a heavy steel hook, because if you can work difficult species with a steel hook, then you can do anything with a steel hook, and then essentially graduate to the lightweight stuff, in my personal opinion.
Makes you faster.
Yeah.
It's like when you go, like, in terms of drumming, you go from like a 2B size stick to like a 7A.
Dude, 7As are
you fly on a 7A.
Or like, what were those big white ones from marching band? What was that? They were huge. They were like a 50 ring gauge.
Those might be the 7Bs, honestly. I'm not sure. I never really cared for the bigger ones like that. I always preferred like 5As or 7As.
Yeah, they were real big and heavy. They were made for
monsoon.
Yeah. That came out of nowhere.
Florida.
Yeah, it's Florida. So yeah, I say baby hooks are great. That pin hook from Brahms is awesome. And then the mini hook from Get Hooked, the neonate hook.
U.S. field herping.
Whew. Underrated.
But I think there might be a slight caveat to that, because
is there?
To people who don't live in the U.S., it's like they're Australia for, us. But I do think that a lot of species native to the U.S. are underappreciated. Like the way that I look at a black racer.
Yes.
It's like, okay, another one of those things. But someone like Nipper who might see, a Burris or something like that, where they're like, yeah, it's a Burris. Like, I would think that was awesome to see one of those.
Sure.
They might see a black racer and lose their mind. To me, it's like, yeah, another one of those things. Black racers are a good example because, they're cool and all, but I kind of get tired of finding them.
Yeah.
But I try to look at our species from the perspective of someone who doesn't have these in their backyard.
Yeah, of course. And I think that the United States as a whole is extremely underrated in its herping, because the people in the United States, for the most part, are blessed in the ability that they're allowed to have exotics.
Mm-hmm.
And because they're allowed to have exotics, they think in their mind, oh, this is just backyard stuff. Garter snakes are backyard stuff. Nerodia is backyard stuff. But
everything's exotic to someone.
Right, exactly. And that's something I focused on a lot. Is I've always been, obviously I'm spoiled to live in the Everglades, but I love field herping regardless of where I am. You know what I mean? And it doesn't matter if it's the same friggin' redback salamander that I've seen every single year growing up as a kid up north. it's still awesome every time. You know,
I mean, a prime example is that little tantilla we found before the wedding. The night before the wedding, we found a little southeastern crown snake, which I haven't seen since I was a kid.
I've never seen one in person.
These little tiny, like centipede-eating
Yep.
rear fang snakes that are tiny, tiny, tiny. Like when you first look at it, you think it's a worm. I found one the night before I got married, and it was like we were both losing our mind. It was like midnight, and we're in the woods at my parents' house, like freaking out over this little coronata we found. And it's like you have an appreciation for that stuff because, I mean, to anybody else, they'd be like, yeah, it's a little brown snake, whatever. Like even Storaria, you know, the decays and the Occipito maculata, the red-bellieds. I really enjoy finding those. Like those are cool. They're super common.
Yeah.
We were just talking about those in the group yesterday. Like it'd be cool to try those out and have a little group of them and see if you could make something happen. Like David Kelly, I think he has a group of them that he's keeping, and he actually seems like he sees them a lot. Like they're actually out and about a lot. So I don't know, but I mean, at the same time, like West Texas, Southwest Texas in particular, that's the only place in the world right now that is like at the top of my list.
And see, that's not the top of my list, but I would go there in a New York minute because I know I would enjoy every second of it.
And part of the reason it is at the top of my list is just because it's in our own backyard. It's right here, you know.
And think about the different ecosystems that our continent has to offer.
Yeah.
You know, it's incredible the amount of
everything.
It covers everything, literally. I mean, hold on, let me think. There is every type of snake in North America, right?
Minus like true vipers.
Yeah, you're right. Minus true vipers. There's everything.
And pythons?
Well, would you count that Mexicana?
I guess.
Could you? That's a python, isn't it?
You're talking about the
ground one.
Yeah.
That would count, right? It's a python, right?
Yes. I don't really know enough about them to be able to say one way or the other. I know they're labeled as a python, but you know, Calabar boas are still labeled boas. It's like, are they?
Yeah. So yeah, I say underrated.
Panther chameleons.
Over. 100% over.
In what way?
I think that they are amazing species. I think that they are rewarding species to someone that finds them rewarding. I think that their level of difficulty is underrated. I think that people say, oh, they're difficult. And people are like, yeah, they are difficult. But then they don't realize that they're difficult. Like, does that make sense? I feel like people bite off more than they can chew.
Tom said, shut up. Panthers rock.
Okay. They're beautiful. They're majestic. Their hormonal colors are fucking amazing. But people always tell you they're difficult and people don't listen. And then they get angry when it's not availed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
I agree. I mean, I've never kept panthers.
They're put on a pedestal as being this pinnacle of chameleon beauty, and they are. They're beautiful, but I think they're a pain in the ass. And unless you love them, and that's really the only thing you keep, it's pain in my ass.
My main gripe with those is just the fact that they don't live very long. Like their lifespan really, I mean, most chameleons, like their lifespan is really not that long. And so to me, it kind of sucks. Like you get one, it grows up, it's gorgeous, it's blue, but you have about, I don't know, like what, 7 years with them, just compared to snakes, I guess.
Not even,
you know, and it
less.
It just sucks. But in comparison to like Jacksons and Veileds and other species that are sort of commonly kept, you know, I kind of understand why they'd be at the top just because of all the colors and stuff, you know.
Oh yeah, like dude, I've had Ambilobes and Ambanjas, like they're gorgeous, man, but it doesn't want to be touched. It doesn't want to be looked at. It stresses out super easy. Half the colors that we love and admire are stress colors. You know what I'm saying? And like, I almost feel bad too. You know, like I used to do house calls for rich folks that had, you know, impressive displays in their home and stuff, whether it be dart frogs or chameleons or whatever. And I had one. He was some executive or something, and he had his own personal chef at the home. And the guy did all 3 meals every single day except for Sunday. And, you know, I would ask the chef, say, hey, chef, did you observe this? Did you observe that? Because he had a bunch of panthers in one big giant wall display. And he would say, yeah, man. He says, that one female that went hormonal purple, she ain't having it. She's going to die. And, like, I realized that it wasn't because of the setup. It was because the guy who owned it would constantly take her out and play with her because she's purple. And I'm like, dude, you can't do that. You're going to stress this animal out to death. And I think that is overlooked by people. They're like, oh, it's fine. It's fine. You know, and all of a sudden you see people with a yearling panther on their shoulder driving in the car. I'm like, it's not a beer dragon. You can't do that. So I think they're very overrated in that sense.
My favorite veileds are the ones that are super dark and hating life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But I don't want to keep one just to keep it like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a veiled as a kid, man. That thing was a dick.
Dude, I bred veileds, and I stopped when I had a flight cage full of babies. I was going to hold them back and let them get a little bigger and see which ones I was going to keep, whatever. And fire ants went in and killed them all. And I was like, I'm done. Because if this was another species of animal, it either could have taken it, or it would have ate them, or it would have been annoyed for a little while and I could have cleaned it off, whatever. But no, these chameleons were like,
I don't know, man. Fire ants are pretty insidious.
Yeah, but dude, I couldn't deal with it. I was done with chameleons. I was like, that's it. I'm out.
What about Alterna?
Oh, man.
That one is kind of tough.
That's super tough. And you, me, and Nipper were just talking about this. So, like, my personal opinion, I think Alterna are underrated because people don't necessarily know they are around or they exist or what they're capable of looking like. However, I feel like the people that obsess on them, not you and Nipper, but like the guys that are like the hardcore purists, they make them overrated.
Agreed. That's pretty much exactly what I would. That's
Yeah.
pretty much where I'm at with them.
Now, I will say this, a species that I think is very underrated because people don't really know about them or they've been mudded out and people don't know what their potential is Pyromelina. I think Pyromelina are friggin' awesome. And like, I really hope that Nipper gets those in the black eye because I'm going to live vicariously through him because I think those snakes are so cool.
You remember in like the early 2000s, those were pyros were the jam, dude. Yeah. And then they kind of just disappeared. They fell off the face of the earth.
And I remember guys were breeding them. They were line breeding them for side patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And like, who could get the most red between these marks? And like, dude, some of those animals just looked crazy. And dude, that is one species that I will see in the wild before I die. I want that quintessential picture of it basking on a rock with the cactus and the mountainscape in the background. Like I will have that picture before I die because that species is awesome. But like, if you asked anybody who keeps colubrids for the most part, or someone who's up and coming in colubrids or just getting into it, be like, hey man, what do you think of Pyromelina? They're like, what? Arizona Mountain Kings. Never heard of it.
That one of those, like my dad randomly got his hands on a Ruthven's at one point when I was a kid, and I really actually enjoyed that snake a lot. I kind of, if I hunt down a pair of Ruthven's Kings, like true
real ones, not muddy.
Yeah, I would be all about them.
Yeah, a buddy of mine who's doing his brother and I did venomous with me a long time ago, and the three of us kind of became hunting buddies. And he has a young daughter. I think she's 6 or 7 now. And he does construction. He's doing a bunch of construction at the farm and doing the renovations at Underground's retail store. And she's like, Dad, I really want to get a pet snake. He's like, awesome. What do you want? She goes, well, I want the ones that look like coral snakes, but they're not coral snakes. So he gets her a Pueblan. And she loves that snake. And then she says, I want one that looks a little different. So he gets her a Ruthven's. And now he starts to get the gears turning, and I think he's going to get opposite sex for both of those, because then he wants to show her, the breeding and
yeah, that'd be cool.
And now he has this whole father-daughter hobby together, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
You know, because those species they're great pet snakes. You know.
Well, we had one more thing to get to, which is COVID predictions, post-COVID predictions, but I think we should save that for next week because I got to pee really bad.
We're at 2:42, man. So
we are, but
yeah.
I'm happy with what we got covered. So
am I. So am I.
This is episode 64 of
brought to you by the fine people at Puget Sound Pythons.
Yes. We will see y'all. Well, you won't see us, but you'll hear us Thursday.
Yeah.
THP 112.
THP 112. Crazy, man. You said it was 3 years this month?
March.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Awesome. And don't forget to go on YouTube and check out the Venomous Etiquette videos.
Yeah.
I will hopefully have another video either end of the month or maybe the first week in March if I can play my cards right. And venomous husbandry on a methodical, boring, yet safe way. So
the way it's meant to be.
Venomous Etiquette videos, guys, on YouTube.
Yes.
So thanks for listening. Thanks for joining. Thanks for commenting and chatting. And
see y'all later.
Bye.